Good morning, everybody. I hope that everybody had a good evening and doing well today. I see that we got most people back. That's good. Appreciate that. Is anything we talked about yesterday that we want to follow up on today? Set it out there. And I know I didn't look, check, didn't get many questions, but I know I didn't do that great of a job. So if there's any questions you have or anything like that, please let me know. If you got a pen and paper, before I forget, because I probably will, here's my email address. It's tferguson20 at comcast.net. tferguson20, the number's 20 at comcast.net. I also have a PLE. It's tom.ferguson at ple.com. And you should be able to find that on the PLE webpage. If you want to get in touch with me or have any questions, please do. Excuse me. Let me know if you need something or something that you want to follow up on that we didn't cover. Give me a email and I'll fire it back at you. One thing that the timing yesterday, there's probably only like there's a video and there's probably about 4 or 5 slides left in yesterday's presentation with the leadership deal. And I wanted to cover that. I think we could have just jumped into today's stuff, which is a little bit more of the drug unit supervisor stuff. But I think with current events, the way things are going, we needed to look at the leadership aspect of it, because I think that's probably going to be, for those of you that are working narcotics now, shouldn't be a problem transitioning or transferring over to another discipline. Or if you're not a supervisor yet, then you're out there and you're a team leader and you're looking to get promoted, you're going to be able to fundamentally do the things that you do out there. As far as the buys, the surveillances, handling CIs and stuff like that. I don't really think you'll have that's an easy transition. The hard part comes transitioning from being out there doing everything to now supervising. And that's the tough part. It was for me. For my supervisors that are already supervisors and have been for a while, or like I asked yesterday, recharging your batteries, might be a good time now to start looking at some of the current events. And I think that's what's going to lead me to talk about this probably this first block. We'll probably cover that for about 45 minutes or so, depending, my timing is not real good. I don't know if you've ever had my instruction before. I don't follow, I think this actually is the first time I've ever followed every hit on every PowerPoint slide. Usually it's more class participation and open conversation, dialogue, and debate. But under these circumstances, we hit every slide. But I think with your opportunity to become supervisors and leaders in that field, the leadership part of it was necessary. This part is really necessary because I asked you yesterday to think about, you're going to be the future. For those that are on, you're going to be the future. Like I said, I came through back in 1979 was when I first came out of recruit class, April 17th, 1979 to be exact. And I worked through the good times and the bad times. I worked through especially in narcotics when we had the war on drugs. So I was came in exactly when that first started. And we had everything. We had all the cars, we had all the equipment, anything we asked for, we got at that time. And I seen a transition from that to terrorism to other things, and they kind of forgot about drugs, and now the legalization of drugs and legalization of this, and the safe houses and the safe spots to shoot up heroin and all that. Times are changing rapidly. And for you out there now, times are really, really changing in a direction that I don't understand. I really don't. Defunding police, and we're actually we're the bad guys. We were the bad guys back then until you needed us. Then we were the good guys. But this has gotten out of hand, in my opinion. This has gotten out of hand, and I just think that with you guys coming in and gals coming in, that you're going to have to reformulate what you say. You're going to have to reformulate what you do. You're going to have to reformulate your actions, because you never know, that one little thing that you do gets you fired. Not only that, but the fact that you're out there trying to defend yourself, defend your life, and you use a certain amount of force and or deadly force, you could be charged criminally. And whether it's a good shoot, bad shoot, doesn't matter. They're gonna run you down the rails and pretty much to destroy your reputation out there. I don't want to stand here and be Dr. Gloom and Doom and Negative Nancy and all that, but I want you to think about that. I want you to think about how things are going to go, and how am I going to adapt to the changes that are going to be put upon us. They're already in Congress now talking about changing how we do what we do. The big talking point now is training and more training, and training and more training. So this might be a good time for you to reevaluate where you're at, reevaluate your thought process. And for my experienced guys, it may be a time to change. Maybe a time to look at it and go, okay, I need to redirect myself, because we talked about yesterday, we talked about learning. Never too old to learn, never have too much experience to learn. And I hope everybody has the PowerPoints up to where you can see it. So we're going to talk about the 4 areas of liability and supervision for us, supervisors. I didn't really pay much attention to this when I was out there working the street. Once I become sergeant, I kind of paid a little bit more attention to that vicarious liability thing. You know what I'm talking about? I paid attention to that, but as far as the other aspects of it, I didn't really give it much thought. And now I think we should look at the thought process of what we do and how we go about that. 4 areas of liability is negligent hiring. I don't think we, in your position, or even in my position, when I left as a captain, I couldn't hire anybody. For some of you that work on the smaller departments or have the ability to have some say in who's hired, who's fired, I think the one thing we need to look at is who's coming into the drug unit. All right. If you have an opportunity to make that decision, that may help. I was fortunate enough to have a good major, my boss. It was another one of those things where we knew each other for, probably 25 years. And at one point, I was his sergeant. He got promoted to sergeant. I was the first sergeant. He was a sergeant. He got promoted to captain. I was still first sergeant. I got promoted to captain. He got promoted to major. So we kind of did that back and forth, and we kind of knew each other. What each other thought, how each other thought about what we should do and how we could do stuff. And it fell back again on what we said when we were out there. Boy, I tell you what, if I ever get to have the opportunity, or if I'm ever the boss, we're going to do this, or I'm going to do this. And what we did was we set up a promotion interview board for the drug unit. We pulled it out to where we had experienced narcotics officers, mid-range, and then we even brought in some new people. People that had less than 2 years in narcotics came in, and they were on the committee, on the interview committee. And we set that up for a reason, because remember I told you yesterday that a lot of times the drug unit, they just get whoever. You know, they ship somebody over there, and 99% of the time, just to be honest with you, it was somebody that was lacking in performance, or that was a discipline problem. We're just going to hide them over there out there at the drug unit and let them deal with them. So that's what we looked at, opportunity to find out who wanted to be there, who actually wanted to come out, who actually wanted to work. And as you all know, long hours involved in narcotics work. I mean, long hours, a lot of different things. We're going to talk about that the next couple hours, about people being placed in positions to where they're under that stress, and what we got to do and what we can do as supervisors to help them along the way. So the other thing, most importantly, that you want to look at here is failure to supervise. That's one of the things that we kind of look at, and it's like, okay, well, we just blow it off, honestly, to be honest with you. And at any given point in time that you guys feel I'm wrong, or my statement's wrong, or my philosophy on that is wrong, send me an email, or send me a question, or throw it out there, and let me know, because that would be something that I want you to understand. My word's not gospel here, by no means. If it was, I'd probably be sitting on Fox News as a commentator, and my expert analyses on all the stuff that's going on would probably be out there. I'd be writing books and such. I'm not. I'm just a no dude that rose up from the ranks, working the street all the way up to the top, and can talk to you about my personal experiences and what I had to deal with and what I had to learn and how I had to overcome some of the obstacles that was out there then. And I have a good opportunity to talk to you from the heart, instead of worrying about me saying something and then getting back to the department, or getting back to PLE, or getting back to somebody. Oh, geez, Ferguson said this, and my God. Well, and I don't have to worry about them firing me or finding another job or anything like that, because I'm at the point now where I've retired, and I'm pretty sure they're not going to take my pension. And if they do, oh well, we'll find something else to do. I'm not worried about it. But what I will do is give you exactly what I think you need to hear about doing some of this stuff, honestly. Is it spot on? It's going to be pretty close. It's going to be pretty close. So failure to supervise is a situation where, let's say, we talked about yesterday, we talked about having an individual that was a go-getter, that just, and I think we were talking about that. We were talking about the micromanaging, and that is, if we got a go-getter, we're going to depend on them, and that's our go-to person, period. If we need something done, we give it to them and they run with it. Now, that's good in a way. And then we talked about the individual that's not really doing anything, that we need to bring up to speed. And I think I gave you a number of, it will be 80% spending time with this individual, 20%, 10%. You tracking with me? I think you might recall. We need to find that, and find that balance of everything. Because the person that's a go-getter and he's doing his job and he's doing what he says and he's our go-to person, he still needs supervise. May not need as much attention to certain things, may be very good at certain things and may not be at the other. But when we talk about the liability aspect of it, I think one thing I didn't put in there, we'll put in there today, is documentation. That's actually in day 4 of this training that you're given 2 days and 4 hours. So documenting everything, every little thing that goes on, you have to document that. You have an opportunity now in modern technology with this goofy thing I'm looking at now called a computer. Back in the day, it was all handwritten notes, hanging folders. Some of my experienced guys out there can relate to this. Hanging folders, file folders, notebooks, matchbooks, writing in every little bit of information you could on certain individuals or certain things. Now you can put it on a computer. And we talked about emails, right? We talked about emails, using emails for date, time, location, stuff like that. I think it's highly recommended that you do that and have a file for each individual. You may have 2 or 3 files depending on what you want to do. And the reason for that is, straight up honest, you're covering your backside. Because you're covering yourself to a point where if something comes back on you as a supervisor, you can look that up and say, no, well, wait a minute. This is what occurred. This is what I have documented. And it's very important because I don't know if you've ever been called on the carpet for it or if you've ever had to go. And I put it down towards as like working a case where I always went into court. If I had to go to court, I always went in with all my I's dotted and my T's crossed. I did not want to be embarrassed in front of the judge, or especially be embarrassed or bring embarrassment upon the department because I was too lazy to do the case properly. I always rather had too much than too little, and I would go in there with that in mind. And the same thing as I got promoted to sergeant. And the other side of it was I told you that I had a supervisor over me that came from internal affairs, and he was very good at internal affairs. He was fantastic at his previous career in internal affairs. He went where the damn as a narcotics supervisor. So his strong point was looking for bad things that we as a group did. So that taught me a lot about making sure I documented everything and have everything documented so that if certain things came up, I'd be able to go in and articulate to a point that, no, wait a minute, this is what I had recorded, or this is what I recorded, this is what I documented. And I think it's very important that you do that. Is it a pain in the butt? Yep, it is. I used to walk around with a 3-ring binder, old school, and that binder went with me everywhere I went. And the reason for that was I just wanted to make sure that I was covered, The other side of the coin is not to be in the negative, but to be in the positive. Is like I said, when we talk about doing evals, or we talk about keeping track of what's going on. We talk about keeping track of cases and things like that, about what our employees, our subordinates are doing. Let me ask you a question, and maybe you've been there before, but I always wanted to point out the positive. I always wanted to point out the positive. I also pointed out the negative. If there was something negative, it was documented. If it was positive, it's documented. And I put it down to the fact that I think we talked about time management. At the end of the day, when we've got 5 days to go and we've got to do their PA, and we sit down and we go, oh, geez, okay, yeah, he did that one case. Yeah, she did that case. And, well, yeah, that was a good case. But, oh, she had a disciplinary, or he had a disciplinary, and I forgot to document that. And when was the date? When was the time? Let's don't do that, all right? Let's look at documenting everything and keeping that file current. So when the day comes that your boss walks in and says, hey, how you doing on those 168 performance evals? Well, I got it. They're all done. They're done? Yeah, they're done. And they're done in a fashion that represent exactly what the employee did, because you're following that format of, remember we talked about building trust, being consistent, being fair, because I'm trying to keep them motivated. If I write a lousy PA, what do they think? Oh, you don't have that in here. Here, I've got, man, I did these cases. I did this. I got this award. I got this letter of accommodation. I don't see that anywhere. If that was in there, when that bumped my score up, oh, well, yeah, yeah, you're right. Here, let me redo it. Now, it's going to be done right the first time. The one thing that really kind of bothered me the most was I literally would spend hours and hours on the PAs because I wanted to make sure I was fair. And the one thing that kind of bothered me the most was when I have the meeting and a subordinate would come in and we'd sit down and I'd slide the old PA over to them and they just sign it and slide it back. Oh, aren't you going to read it or look at it? Or no, they just look at the number. If that's what you guys do. If not, you look at the positive and they just slid it back. I'm like, well, okay. That took 30 seconds for me to do 3 hours of work. But it was fair, and it was fair to them. So that's what I'm getting at there. Let's make sure that we document as much as we can. make sure that you cover all your bases in that, good and bad, plus and minus, negative and positive, so that you're fair in that regard. As we spoke yesterday too, if you just, as a supervisor, if you just keep in the back of your mind that that's what you want to be, I want to be fair. I never really, when I talk about being fair and being consistent and that, it was a job to me. It was my work. Of course, we're all human beings, and I had my favorites, and I still have my favorites today. I had my favorites, and I had some that weren't my favorites. But I try not to put that in the spot of making it personal. It was business, pretty much. I learned that early on, where I worked at a company where a sign manufacturing company. I was a foreman on the CNC laser machine, and I was a shipping foreman. And I learned that early on. We go into a meeting, and it was my first experience in a big corporation like that. And we go into a meeting, and they're yelling and cussing and screaming at each other because they didn't get this part out, or they didn't get that part out, and it cost us all this money. And I literally, I'm sitting back going, whoa, they're yelling and cussing and screaming. And after the meeting, they look over and say, hey, okay, what we're going to lunch at, guys? And they'd all laugh and joke and go to lunch. Well, that was business. This is friendship. This is other personal, okay? So keep that in mind too. Failure to train. So back to failure to supervise. I apologize for jumping a little bit quick ahead. I got this thought. That's what they're going to be looking at now. As far as this new idea on policing is coming forth, failure to supervise, failure to be out there. I too want to throw out there too, in that regard, how many times you've been in a sticky situation where, you know, the guy's doing this or the gal's doing that, and I see it, and they're kind of running on that slippery slope, and they're doing something. But you know what, man, they're performing. You know, they're making cases, they're doing the right thing, and you see something, but you don't say something. That's the hard part. Nowadays, I think we need to, if we see something, we need to say something. Not for the opportunity to demean someone or to mess with the officers involved or that, but for the sanctity of our department, the sanctity of policing in general. I think it's time we might have to look at weeding out some of the individuals who don't want to conform to the policies of the department and start looking in that direction a little bit. So that's all I'm going to say on that one. Failure to train. Those are situations to where we as a department, or we as individuals, we can do our own training. I think that we are able to, apologize, I was looking at, I got a text coming on my phone. We can train at any time. You can train at any time. Is there certain things that you can do as a supervisor to train your individuals, to get them trained up or to get them advanced in what they're doing? You can do that at any given time. There's nothing to say that you don't have the latitude to do that when you are out there in the field. I know for a fact that I was involved with the Indiana Drug Enforcement Association, Narcotics Association. If you have that in your area, it's something to look at. They can provide training. I'm going to PLE, of course. You know, I'm a little biased there, but we can provide as much training. There's opportunity for training, and I feel that the way things are going now, with individuals wanting police officers better trained, that the opportunities are going to be there for that, and the money is going to be there for that. So, but anyways, you can still train when you're out there working. You can still train. As a member of the IDEA, I was a trainer at our basic undercover school. I trained that. I trained our guys department-wise and other departments and agencies. I trained them in surveillance. And the reason for that was we didn't have enough manpower in our area. So it was always, mobile, moving here and there, doing cases. And our goal was to train up all the narcotics officers in Indiana and have them on the same page as far as how we did our deals, how deals were done, how we handled our informants. Surveillance was very important there. And the idea was so that we can go from one demographic to another and hook up with another unit or another group, and we're all on the same page. We're all working the same way. And it worked out really, really well. So if you have an opportunity sometimes where you're looking at, you need a manpower, and I know out there's some departments that have 2-3 people. I know I do a lot of teaching down south, and you get down some of the small southern cities, towns, municipalities, they may only have 3 people. They may only have 2 people. I know I did a training in Mississippi, and the guy was the garbage guy, he was the dog catcher, he was the cop, he was a narc, and he was on the city council. So a lot of hats to wear there, but he was at the training. So when I was out there working with our guys, we would do surveillance training. We would usually meet at a buffet, because that way, if you got a call, you had to take off, you could get something to eat and you can get out of there without waiting. And at that point in time, when I would be there, I'd have my sergeants show up, or I would call for a squad meeting, group meetings, and my sergeants would show up, and I would just look at them and I would say rabbit. That's all I'd say. I'd say rabbit. I'd go pay my meal. I'd go get in my car, and I'd take off. Thus saying, that was the code for surveillance training. And especially if we had the groups together and we had a couple, 2 or 3 new guys in the group, I would go out, I'd sit, I'd give them 5 minutes to get together, and then I would take off. And I have to have, there should be eyeballs on me that would pick up and get the other group in there. And we'd go out and we'd do surveillance for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so. If it was Friday, we'd do it for 2 or 3 hours, all right? So we would go out and do that. And then after the day, we'd have a after action report. We'd sit down, okay, what'd you do? How'd you do this? And especially we had new people. Okay, what did you think? How did this work? How'd that work? Where were you at? What was your involvement? So there's opportunity to do that. There's opportunity to do scenarios. There's opportunities to do everything out there. As a supervisor, if you want to do it and take the time and effort to do it, it's there, all right? So let's make sure we look at doing that. And make sure we train our people up, because that's one thing that's going to come back to bite you if an incident happens and someone gets jammed up and that vicarious liability kicks in. It's going to come back to bite you on the failure to train. Negligent retention, we really have, it's hard for us to do that at the level that you're going to be at. That we're talking, that's chiefs and superintendents and stuff and above. That's where that's at. But can I get in a situation as a supervisor, if someone's not doing their job and doing it wrong, and we've got a bunch of complaints, we've got a bunch of things going negative going on, through the performance appraisal or through my observations of documentation, right? Documentation, can we make a move to move that individual on, or to get that individual out of law enforcement? Was what we're talking about here. Retaining somebody that's not properly trained, retaining somebody that has a lot of baggage with them, or may have came from another department to your department that has that baggage, but continues to do those things that are wrong. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. So when you talk about that, if I have hiring or firing powers, which I don't probably, but I have documentation powers. And for that, what I would like to say to you is, if I've got all that documented and all that put down, and I've gone even on the PAR, on his performance appraisal, or I pass that information on up to the next level of command, they know that. So if something comes up where this individual does something and tries to fall back on you about negligent retention, no, wait a minute, time out. I've got all the documentation that I've passed up to you. As a matter of fact, not only is it documented, but here are the emails, date, timestamp in that file that represent what I sent to you. So basically CYA on my part, okay? Let's make sure we look at that part of it. Again, I'm not trying to be negative Nancy. What I'm trying to do is get you thinking in that regard of what I need to do and how I need to do something to cover myself, all right? So let's make sure we remember that when we go forward. I don't know why it's probably better. Okay, my apologies on that. I had the wrong slide up. Anyway, I had it set up wrong, but is it looking better now, I hope? Okay, this is a video, Betrayed by the Badge, and it's an old one. I mean, it's super old, but it's good to a point that it brings out, but actually, to be honest with you, this is back when news was news. It brings back, it points out this negligent hiring act. It also depicts and talks about exactly what is said here, what I talked about we have to document. If we see something, say something, do something. Even if it's to the point of taking an individual to the side and said, hey, not for nothing, but this is what I see and this is what you're doing, and I'm keeping track of that. All right, so you may want to change your ways, or you may want to look at it differently. And that can go from anywhere from drinking on the job, theft, stealing, you name it, what have you. I mean, I've seen it all, sorry to say, with law enforcement and police officers, but it goes that far. You know, hey, I'm going to give you an opportunity to clean up your act, but if not, I'm going to keep it down. But then again, in order for me to cover my backside, I'm going to move it up. I'm going to set it up to the top. All right, so take a look at this video and see what you think, okay?
No case that better illustrates the devastating consequences when the system fails to root out bad cops than the case of Officer Timothy Harris. Tim Harris began his career here at the Melbourne Village Police Department. It was also here that he began a practice that would ultimately prove deadly. While a patrolman here as far back as 1978, Harris began stopping women, taking their driver's licenses and keeping them, and using the names and addresses from those licenses to pursue them. Because of his actions, Harris was asked to resign from this police department. But in spite of that, they gave him highly favorable recommendation, which he used to get his next job in law enforcement. This was Officer Harris's record at the Melbourne Village Police Department. He had been suspended once. He had 3 allegations of serious violations pending against him, and he was described by the Melbourne Director of Public Safety as totally incompetent and not fit to be a policeman. But this is the recommendation the same agency gave him. He is trustworthy, intelligent, and has a high sense of responsibility for his profession as a police officer. For that, Harris moved on, and in 1982 applied to the Florida Highway Patrol. It was in that job, a job in which Harris patrolled the roads virtually unsupervised, he began having an affair, visiting his girlfriend while on duty, then returning to his wife. When his wife found out about the affair, Tim Harris's life and marriage began to unravel, and he returned to his old ways, using his job to stalk women. From this vantage point, parked here along I-95, Officer Tim Harris could see the drivers in the cars coming toward him. He admits he chose this location to pick out attractive women. Then, using his authority as a policeman, he pulled them over. Attorney Michael Whalen.
Tim frequently referred to them as sluts. He would ride down the road, yelling to them sexual comments, sticking his head out his truck window, flicking his tongue at them with other police officers.
Officer Harris also began writing lewd comments on traffic tickets and decorating his car with obscene cartoons. But apparently no one turned him in. When his wife Sandy asked for a divorce, Harris lost control. Sandy's brother-in-law, Vero Beach Police Captain Don Daffy.
He was starting to become unkempt. He was living in parking lots. He was living at rest stops on the interstate.
These signs of Florida Highway Patrol should have picked up, in my opinion. Yeah. One night, Officer Harris followed Sandy to a local bar and began dragging her by the neck. When her brother-in-law tried to intervene, Harris exploded in rage, swearing and screaming at Don Daffy. He was concerned with his behavior, Harris might harm someone in the general public.
Yes, I would. And I expressed that concern to the supervisor.
On Sunday morning, March 4th, Trooper Harris set out to work, and a young woman named Lorraine Hendricks set out on a trip south.
Lorraine left Jacksonville about 7 o'clock in the morning to drive down to take care of some business in Fort Lauderdale. What happened next was pieced together after the fact, of course.
Lorraine, a vibrant woman committed to family and community, was planning to see some old friends, unaware that on her trip she would encounter a deeply disturbed police officer.
She trusted authority, and she would not be someone who would just stop for anything.
After missing days of work and feeling out of control, Tim Harris says that in desperation, he asked his supervisors for help. On Friday, March 2nd, he pleaded to be taken off the road, but he was told to work the weekend. A meeting with a psychiatrist was set up the following week. Before that could happen, the paths of Officer Harris and Lorraine Hendricks would cross.
So I sat at the north end of my car. Started thinking about a lot of things, and you know where to go. She wouldn't call that afternoon.
Lorraine's husband, Rick Hendricks.
Didn't hurt anything. So all of a sudden, she just vanishes.
Tim Harris spoke in prison for the first time to 2020 producer Karen Burke.
We didn't stop her for 6.
What was it? What made you stop?
At 11:30 that morning, Officer Tim Harris ordered Lorraine Hendricks into his car. The handles were removed from the door. There was no way out. Then he drove her to a secluded spot off I-95, where highway patrol officers often stopped to rest.
But you drove up. You want to put fire?
When I just said, I didn't care, I mean, nothing was working right, so I didn't care. I left loose along the route,
You expected it to happen.
and I just brought it in.
According to police reports and Harris's own testimony, he slowly raped, tortured, and finally strangled Lorraine Hendricks. Throughout, he called her Sandy, the name of his ex-wife. Lorraine pleaded for her life. But Officer Tim Harris was too far gone. Lorraine died that afternoon. Later, Harris returned to the scene and hid Lorraine's body in pine needles. Then the officer returned to work. He would stay on the job for another 4 weeks until he was finally arrested.
We went back. I didn't know what actually happened. I found it. And the only way.
You feel like you can back up and work with something.
Been young, but you come off and it's walked away.
Lorraine's husband, Rick Hendricks, who proudly wears the uniform of the United States Army, feels profoundly betrayed.
You can't be an angry person. It's like the system, violating the trust. You come down on me. That lady should never have died. Should have never been stopped.
For Hendricks, telling his daughter how her mother died was the hardest thing he ever had to do.
So there you have it. Like I said, it's an old depiction of what happens to officers when we go over the edge. Can we relate that to current events today? Can we relate the fact that everyone kind of saw what was going on, could see what was happening, but didn't say anything or didn't in progress and to move to help. Now we have the officer assistance program. We have all kinds of things that we can get help for those that need it. And I've seen it and reported it and actually been involved in situations where I hated to say something or do something, but I had to do something not only for the officer's benefit, but for everyone's benefit, to the point where you didn't want something to happen to them. The one thing I say too is I've had at least 5 my friends, and I mean real friends that I worked with day in, day out, commit suicide. Being far that way, I don't want to delve into that and get off of that and get off our topic, but something to think about. This year, not too long ago, Derek Chavez, and I'm probably not pronouncing that right, Chavez, and the Ford incident, we had passed. And I don't know, because I haven't delved into it, because it's a little bit too early for me to look into that. But it's had past disciplinary problems and things going on in the past that should have been observed. And it all falls back to, like I told you before, we get people that come in and we get people in, and it's just a situation where we have to document that. All right. 3 rules every supervisor needs to remember. Don't take things personally. It's going to be hard to do. It's going to be tough when you're trying to help and you think you're helping and you think you're doing the right thing by leading by example and doing things the way you think they should be done. And you have to either go into a mode of motivating individuals to actually work or do something. You have to make decisions that aren't popular. You have to make disciplinary action, take disciplinary action. It's pretty sad to say, but if you're going to do your job and do it right, it's going to be tough on you. It's going to be hard. You're going to have people that really hate you, actually. And I know they've hated me and pretty much called me every name in the book. Pretty much, from taskmaster to some words I probably shouldn't use, and I'm not going to. And I'll just be honest with you, yeah, they hated me. And my thing was that, you know what, you can't do what you want. There's a job to do between the hours of 8 and 4:30, or that 8-hour and 8.5-hour period that you're out here working, taking money from the citizens, the taxpayers of state of Indiana. Then yeah, you're going to work. You're going to perform. You're going to do your jobs. And that's what I looked at. I didn't care. I had empathy for people. I cared about them. I did the best I can to take care of them. But the fact of the matter is, you signed up to work, and that's what we're going to do. So try not to take things personally. My exit interview with the superintendent when I retired was, he asked me, he says, "Can you tell me, or let me know, or tell me what do you think your greatest accomplishment was in your career, Tom?" I'm thinking, I don't know. Note buys. In my hand, I'm thinking big cases, negotiating 4,000 pounds of marijuana, kilos, seizures over $1 million, this, that, and the other thing, and what I did, and 2 life-saving awards and firearms awards, blah, 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 blah. All this is going through my head. And finally, it clicked. And I said, from the time I got goosebumps thinking about it. From the time I was a team leader and I first joined the narcotics section, to the time that I'm leaving you today as either a leader or in a leadership capacity as a supervisor, not one of my guys or gals got hurt. Oh, we've got little scabs and breaks and little skin missing from doing certain entries, but not one got hurt. Not one got shot. Not one got stabbed. Not one killed anybody else. or we beat anybody else or anything like that happen. And if you stop and think about it, from the time I was sergeant to the time I was captain, and I spent 23 years in narcotics, that's the part I'm proud of. Everybody that worked for me or worked with me went home that evening. Well, I'm not going to say they actually went home, but the bars count. But everybody was safe. Okay, so that's the thing that I look at. Yeah, you're going to get beat up, you're going to get slapped around, but don't take things personally. Don't hold grudges. Let it go. Don't hold grudges. Let it go. Don't let that persuade you into treating someone unfairly. The greatest thing you can do is, if someone treated you unfairly out there when you worked with them or when you was out there and you become the boss, is to treat them better than what they treated you and put that back on them. I had an incident where one of my best friends, female, we worked, matter of fact, it was that, they used to call it work spouse or what have you, because we worked a lot of cases together. We were good friends. Her and her husband, my wife and I, we vacationed together, we picnicked together. I went, we skied together, had a good friendly relationship. We were good friends. We were pretty close. And she got promoted, and I got promoted. She got promoted, and I got promoted. And it got to the point where it was a competition for her to get promoted over me. She got promoted to lieutenant. Then I got promoted to captain, and everything fell apart as far as our friendship did. And I could just be honest with you, she was on one side of the administration, I was on the other side of the administration, and things just blew up. And the first day in the office as a captain downtown is I called her into the office, and I was sitting at my desk and she came in, and I stood up and I stuck my hand out and I said, "Hi, let me introduce myself." So that was my attempt to reintroduce and start over and not hold that grudge. And I didn't. And I ended up doing the best I could to help her. Got a new car for her, replaced the car that she's had for like 8 years and hundreds of thousands of miles on it. Not anything I'm not patting myself on the back, but it's an example of what I'm telling you, not to hold grudges, even with your worst enemy. Don't hold grudges. Be better than that. Be above that. Be a good supervisor. Don't prejudge situations or people. Again, I think that falls back to what we talked about for coaching and developing folks. Again, I get somebody that comes in that wasn't very active out there in the field, and was doing things that wasn't productive. And they shipped them over to the drug unit. And when they came over, I get a call from their prior boss. "Oh yeah, man, this guy's a slug. He's coming to you. Good luck." So in my mind, I'm thinking, what? Oh, geez, great. Well, no, don't prejudge situations and or people. Use the skill of active listening, please. Use the skill of active listening. Listen to what they have to listen to, what people say. Listen to what your subordinates have to say. Yeah, I'd like to hear you, but I'm so busy, I ain't got time to listen. No, you don't. You got time to listen. I found that once I got up to that level, every conversation was 15 minutes. I don't know why, but I could set my watch to it. Every conversation was at least 15 minutes, and some were longer. But be an active listener. Listen to what individuals are telling you. Listen, see and feel what's going on around you. Be attentive to what's happening, what's going on, what you see, what you feel, what that instinct is telling you. So be an active listener. All right. I think it's break time right now. I'm going to flip over, and we're going to go into, for the next 3 hours, we're going to go into actively what you're looking at as far as a drug unit supervisor. We're going to talk about some things there. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints to this point? Let me know. Send me some questions and that if you have any questions. Again, I know for a fact that I'm not doing an absolute stand-up job when nobody's got a question, comment, or concern, okay? Be gentle with me on the technical side of it because I'm old. So let's take a break. We'll be back in a minute, okay? Okay, we're back. And we're going to go through the drug unit supervisor stuff. We're going to start talking now a little bit more about where you guys are at, your discipline being in the drug unit. So with that, we're going to start with talking about that and going through this. So I want you to, you may have seen this video. You may have, you may not. If you haven't, it's an eye opener. If you have, it's still an eye opener. I've seen it several times and it's given me goosebumps at every moment. Especially now, it has a lot of meaning to what we're going through, and that I want you to watch through it. If you've seen it before, watch it again, give it some more thought. At the end, the words that are said at the end are pretty much relevant so much today. So take a look and we'll jump into the discussion.
I don't know what to say, really. 3 minutes to the biggest battle of our professional lives. All comes down to today. We heal as a team. We're going to come inch by inch, play by play, till we're finished. We're in hell right now, gentlemen. Believe me. And we can stay here, get the shit kicked out of us, or we can fight our way back into the light. We can climb out of hell. 1 inch at a time. Now, I can't do it for you. I'm too old. You know, when you get old in life, things get taken from you. I mean, that's part of life. But you only learn that when you start losing stuff. You find out life's this game in inches. The margin for error is so small. I mean, 1/2 a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us. They're in every break of the game, every minute, every second. On this team, we fight for that inch. On this team, we tear ourselves and everyone else around us to pieces for that inch. We claw with our fingernails for that inch. Because we know when we add up all those inches, that's gonna make the fucking difference between winning and losing. Between living and dying. I'll tell you this, in any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die who's gonna win that inch. And I know if I'm gonna have any life, it's because I'm still willing to fight and die for that inch. Because that's what living is. The 6 inches in front of your face. Now I can't make you do it. You gotta look at the guy next to you. Look into his eyes. Now I think you're gonna see a guy who will go that inch with you. You're gonna see a guy who will sacrifice himself for this team because he knows when it comes down to it, you're gonna do the same for him. That's a team, gentlemen. And either we heal now as a team, or we will die as individuals. That's all it is. Now, what are you gonna do?
hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, and I still get goosebumps, and I still get emotional when I see that. And so we progress and we move forward and we do the best we can, and we uphold that oath that we took. So let's move forward. Let's get together on this and see what are covert ops. In order to be on the same page, we need to define covert ops. And since this is a webcast, we can't do it in front of you. We'll just kind of throw it out there to you, and you kind of think about what is covert ops and what are the aspects of what we do out there in the narcotics and investigative world. I don't know about you, but I haven't really heard a lot about drugs and drug enforcement lately. I've heard a lot about burning statues and beating cops and Black Lives Matter and this, that, and everything else. I've seen a lot about free drug zones and CHOP and free areas and places and free needles and legalization of heroin and marijuana, but I'm not seeing anyone talking about enforcing the drug laws. Have you? Some of you, I looked at the roster and some of the states that we're in, they're legalizing marijuana, or the penalty for possession of marijuana is not there. I know I'm surrounded by Illinois, unfortunately. For those that are in Illinois, I'm sorry. Michigan is in Michigan, their legalization. Ohio's going to make that move. So I don't know what to say about our world of covert operations. Is it transitioning to we're going to be out there as an intelligence team, intelligence gatherers? I don't know. In your area, something that you look at, something to think about when we talked about making transitions and training and that sort, reevaluating the use of your personnel and where your personnel are and what they do. To me, back in the day, covert ops was blending in, role playing, identifying individuals and criminal violations, identifying drug users, drug locations, drugs people, basically intelligence gathering. So that's what it was to me. I was very fortunate to come in at the time I did because, like I said before, was in the war on drugs, and it was a good time. Me and as I told you, my mentor and the team I worked with down in Indianapolis, we worked hard, put a lot of people in jail for drug violations and that, but played a good role there. Like I said, I did 13 years on the street, which is probably too long. Yeah, mentally, gotcha. Mentally, it's probably too long, but this is a photograph of me. If you can see it fairly well there, it's back in the day when I first started working. I think I had like 5 years on and undercover. And you can see in the picture here, if you can, that's a pot-bellied pig with a harness. It's a pet pot-bellied pig. And I got my garb on there. And in the background, you can see there's an old Ford van parked in the back. And that's my undercover vehicle. The location was at, we used to have a place up in Indiana, up around Noblesville, Hamilton County, called Deer Creek. And it was a concert venue. It was one of the biggest concert venues in the country at the time. And they held a bunch of concerts there. And one of the concerts they held there was the Grateful Dead. The Grateful Dead came in every year. It was a mass exodus to that place. I mean, you're talking about every mushroom eater and piece of love rainbow wearing individual in the country would come to this location from far and near. And we worked undercover there, quite successful. And the reason I have the pig is because the individual that had the pet pig, she was arrested for selling mushrooms, and nobody knew what to do with the pig. So I said, you know what? I was raised on a farm. I can handle a pig. So I'm going to take Alfred. Yes, that's his name, Alfred. I'm going to take Alfred with me. So I took Alfred. And I don't know about you, but any guys sitting out there. I have a black lab that I've had for years. It's my buddy and my good hunting dog. We go to South Dakota a lot and do a lot of pheasant hunting, and it's my good dog. But is anybody, you guys especially, the girls, okay, I'm sure, but more so guys, you ever walk through a park anywhere with the black lab puppy? What happens? You just attract beautiful women for whatever reason. I'm just saying. You imagine walking through a Grateful Dead concert with a pig? Think about it. They would come near and far to see Alfred. And when they showed up, they'd come and we'd be hanging out by the van. We'd hang out by the van, Alfred and I, and we're talking and we're having a good old time with the gang. And there'd be 5 or 6 in there smoking weed and eating mushrooms and doing drugs. And on the other side of the van, there's 3 or 4 couples out in the grass having sex and just having a good old time. And about that time, I'd kind of shuffle off and disappear with Alfred. I'd call the ERT guys over, and they'd go over and they'd roust about and they'd arrest everybody in that area. And I'd move the van to another area and I'd sit up, and me and Alfred sit out there and we'd do our little thing and attract people to come over. Covert ops. Thinking about what we do in the situation that we're in and making the situation good that we're in to be able to work it. The only downside to working back then that we're going to talk about today that's made vast improvements on how we go about our businesses. You notice anybody else around that van or me or other than the individual who's taking a picture was one of the Grateful Dead people that asked, can I take a picture of your pig? And it was just me. If you notice, excuse me, on my left hand, you can't see, but there's on my wrist, there's a wrap. It's on my wrist, a different color wrap than what the concert venue people had. And with that, the reason that was on there was that if I got in trouble and the group came in to arrest people, or I was in the middle of a fight or a dope deal or something like that, I was to hold that wrist up, and the local police or the police officers or security that was involved in the concert, the event, they would know that I was an undercover police officer. So I hold that up because I was by myself. It was me and 2 other guys, 2 other narcs, and that was it. And there was maybe 5, 6, 7,000 people or more. And we was the only narcs working that detail. So there's times when something would break out, a fight, and we drift over there to look and see what's going on, to gather intel to let the guys know what's going on. And some overzealous police officers wouldn't recognize the wristband. So back in that day, I was pretty stout and full of vigor, and we ended up fighting each other. And luckily for me, somebody that knew me would come up and say, well, hey, he's one of ours. So I got out of that deal. But that's where we're at when we talk about why covert ops and what we would do with our ops and how we go about our business. When we do that, especially supervisors, and we place officers in covert roles, we're exposing them to different kind of situations than normal. I know for a fact that me growing up in a rural area and not really, honestly, not very versed on big city living, I guess you could say, and got a big reality check when I went to Indianapolis to work down there. And starting out, it was difficult to, in my mind, it was difficult to say, okay, this is good, this is bad, I shouldn't go here, I shouldn't do this, because being a young narcotics officer, I was just having the lust to make the bust, to go out and buy dope. That was first and foremost, is to go out and make those cases and put those people in jail. So when I talk about this now in the role of supervision, and I also do a risk assessment class too, that kind of pertains to what we're talking about also, is that's what I want you thinking about now. We talked about what it takes to build a team. We talked about leadership. We talked about how we deal with people, active listening, observation, things of that nature. So now we're going to apply that, what we've learned, into what we're doing now. Those guys that are out there and gals out there now that either are sergeants or supervisors or are in an undercover role, you know what I'm talking about. And I can talk about that from, this is probably my closest to the heart lecture that I do because living it and being out there and seeing what we're going through now and seeing how we're conducting business. But when we talk about placing officers in these roles, these pretty much, and ladies, I apologize, I don't have, the only hunk picture that you got to see was me back then, and I know that was really, really disappointing. And I've been trying to think about changing this and putting a real buff guy up there, so I'll get around to that eventually. But this is what you're going to deal with out there when our guys are going out. I know that situations where you're going to be put in a place where you're playing a role and you're trying to be one of the bad guys and you're doing things that it's going to test your moral compass of getting there. Let's look back at the officer from Florida with the situation that he had in that. Now imagine turning me loose in that situation with the moral compass that's pretty much out of whack. And again, going into these places and doing business as a narc really tests that moral compass, really tests where you're at up here. I think that some of the saving graces for me was that foundation where I had, well, I'm a real policeman. I went through one divorce and came out of that better. After that was a serious learning curve for me because basically all I did was work. I was always at work and never at home. That balance thing we talked about, it was really out of whack. So with that coming back into the help, because I don't know what I would have done if I would have maintained that out of balance character going into situations like this. And that's something we got to look at as supervisors about where our people are. This is just one of the many things that we have to be concerned with as supervisors about placing our guys in positions or in situations that could be troublesome for them. What are we doing? How are we going about that? The other thing is this, is cash, is money. You're going to come across your guys are going to come across a lot of money, opportunities out there, a lot of cash. I know for a fact that I've sat down and seen 1.5 million. We've seen 9 million. We've seen 15 million. There's been situations where it's just me with flash rolls or money that was discovered or recovered, or just plain simple had an individual in the drug world that placed 150,000 cash in the backseat of my car just to see what I would do. In a backpack, put it back there, and hey, it's yours, just take it, it's all yours. Well, I appreciate it, and the department will appreciate it too, so thank you very much. But it's going to put you in a spot to where you're going to have to deal with individuals that you supervise, that you're going to have to know where their head's at. And that the only way you're going to be able to do that is by listening to them, by talking to them. If you see something out of content, out of character, we have to talk to them and relate them. Does that mean I got to have my nose up in their business all the time? No. It just means if I see something, I need to talk to that individual. I need to play that role, because what happens is a lot of times is we will see something, but we won't say something. All right. We will see something, but we won't say something because, I don't know if I want to get involved in that or if I want to do that, but this is something that we need to do. Keeping on top of that is probably one of the things that's going to build that, even to the point of it's going to build that trust, because they're going to pass that on. Like, hey, man, I was down the dumps. I know I wasn't doing right. I know I wasn't doing good. And Ferguson came up to me and talked to me. Man, the guy helped me out. He helped me out really well. So you're going to build that friendship with your subordinates as you go along. Drugs, involvement of drugs or use of drugs, or put in a place to where the opportunity to use drugs is going to be there. The opportunity for you to be involved in drug usage, be tempted by, or to be pushed or try to be persuaded into. And I would say this, especially for my young guys just going in that's doing street level stuff. Some of my experienced guys, when we moved up, and it's more of a business for them in the drug world selling than it is being out on the street dealing with young gangbangers in that situation. It's going to try to persuade you to use drugs or see if you use the dope in order for you not to be a cop and that sort of thing. So some of the things you want to look at. We want to talk about risk assessment. What is risk assessment? Analyzing what we're doing, looking at the situation, fundamentally looking at the situation. Not when I say risk assessment, I say dissecting the risk. What's it going to take when whatever we're doing? Is it a buy? Is it by bust? Is it a surveillance? Is it a warrant? Is it a takedown? Whatever it is, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at every potential pitfall that we can, and we're going to assess that. Then at that point, once we assess that pitfall, we're going to reevaluate that decision. Remember, with the information I had, right, this is the best result we could come up with. But that information has to be solid, i.e., I don't know how this is done or why it's done or how it even happens, in my opinion. How do you, a search warrant, hit the wrong house? I don't know how that happens, but it does. It never happened to me. It never happened to my group. And the reason for that is risk assessment is making sure that's the thing, that's the number, that's the place you want to go. There's checks and balances that go along with that. You have your guys go out, they do their initial, you have informants that give me the information, you have guys that do that, you have research that do that, you have people that are in intelligence that check and verify stuff like that. So if you do your homework, I think that's a hard thing to overcome, is the fact that you hit the wrong house. Risk assessment is, they say, why is it done? Why would you think you need risk assessment? I say safety, number one. Number one is safety. The rest of it will come or the rest of it will go. There's always an opportunity to make a case or to buy the dope or to do the search warrant or to get the bad guy. It's done for safety. And the safety is the utmost number one paramount there. And we're talking about who should do the assessment. Everybody, from the bottom to the top, everybody should have some input in that. What are we going to look at? And especially depending on what you're going to do. Is it a search warrant? Is it a buy? The thing too is all the tangibles that go in there is going to be, if we have to go in and do an extraction for our undercover or the CI, we have to go in and do an extraction. How do we get in there? We're looking at all aspects, fences, dogs. I want to know even right down to which side the door opens, which side the door is hinged on. How do we get in and make that happen safely? What's the neighborhood like? Is there counter surveillance? Everything you want to put in here. And while I'm talking about that, let me ask you a question. Is there a difference between a gram buy and a kilo buy? Or a major search warrant or a stop and knock? No. Because will they kill you for a gram? Yes. Same for a kilo. Same for a knock, a no knock. Same for a knock and talk. So when I did my assessments and when I looked at stuff and I looked at things, I treated it the same way, folks. To me, there was no such thing as a small deal or just another deal. Or we're going to go out, when you'll hear this. Well, what are we going to do? We're going to do the same thing we did yesterday, but it's at this address. What does that mean? You tracking with me? As a supervisor, you need to let your people know that these things that we go out and do, number one, is going to be for safety, but number two, we're going to do it the same way each way, and we're going to start from the beginning. I told you about working at Deer Creek. And that wasn't just Deer Creek. That was working the whole time back then. We didn't do ops plans. We didn't do assessments. We just went out and said, hey, look, they're selling heroin in that house. Let's go buy dope. Let's go hit it. That's exactly what happened. And I'll be straight up honest with you. I can tell you a story too about, and I don't like war stories, but it's relevant to some of these things. But hopefully that I'm not beating you about the head and shoulders with war stories, but this happened to me. We were out doing what we call a Trojan horse one day down in Indianapolis. And what it was is I'd be in a van or I'd be in a vehicle, an unmarked vehicle, and I'd have sometimes I'd have an informant, and sometimes I'd just be by myself. And I'd have the ERT guys, the SWAT team guys, in another van behind me or close proximity. And we just ride through a certain location that was identified as a popular place to sell narcotics. And I'd either make a buy or I'd even talk dope or see dope or whatever. And then I'd get around the corner and I'd call out who it was, give a description, and the van would roll up and they'd snatch the guy and throw him in the van and take him to an off-scene location, to a jail bus, and then we load up the jail bus and take him to jail. And we did that religiously. It was very successful at it because what we were trying to do was eliminate the drug activities in that certain area based on the complaints that we got from the people that live down in that area and from the mayor's office and such. So on this particular day, we were doing the Trojan horse, and I had this informant with me. We're riding through, we finished up, and the informant says, hey, I know a place where we can buy heroin. Okay, sounds good. So I get on the radio and I call my team leader and I say, hey, not for nothing, but the informant has a location where we can buy some heroin if you guys are interested. Oh, yeah, we'll do that. Okay. So I get team leaders follow me, and we're driving around, and I get to the location, and we go by, and I turn, some of my experienced guys understand what I'm talking about. Flip the turn signal on, hit the brake lights. That's the house right there we're going to go to. So I go out around and I wait for 5 or 6, 10 minutes or so. And, on the radio, I'm headed back. Don't get a response. I'm headed back. I go back, stop the informant and we get out of the car, walk up to the house, knock on the door. The door swings open, and as the door swings open, the informant goes in first, and he kind of peels off to the right. I go in and I go to the left, and I get about 3 steps into this location. I'm thinking to myself, I don't think this is a good spot. And I look to my left, and it's a kitchen area, and there's a table and about 3 chairs, and on the table is all the heroin and riggings and equipment to shoot heroin. Then behind the table sits a guy there counting his money. And behind me, as I turn and look, the guy behind me, he's about, I would say he's 350, 360, about a biscuit shy of 375. He's about 6'12", and he barricades the door. And I look down the hallway, and I can see a guy standing down the hallway, and I can see a guy standing over in the corner. And in front of me, off to my right, there's a couch and a couple of chairs, and there's people laying on the floor. There's people passed out on the couch. I look to the left, and the guy's motioning me to come over. What did I just do? I just walked into a shoot house, they call it. That's where you walk in, you use the dope, you shoot up using their stuff, their rigging, their everything. Go pass out, get on the nod, wake up, and you leave. That's exactly where I was at. No cash and carry in this place. You use the dope right there. So I get into the kitchen area and I sit down, and the guy's asking me, hey man, what you want? And I tell him I'm looking for a junior, and he says, well, that'd be X amount of dollars. Here's your stuff. I said, man, I ain't using nobody's rig, and I didn't bring my rigs. I said, I talked to my boy over there, and he said that it's cash and carry. I said, I'm not here. All right. So we sit there and negotiated to the point where I either was going to use the dope, or there was going to be one serious gun battle going on pretty quick. I just tell you straight up. And my thought was, what I'd have to do is I'd have to really take out the guy by the door, the 6'12" guy. And that would be my first shot, because I think the guy sitting at the table would be so startled by that. Then the next shot would be the guy by the window, because that's where I'm going to have to jump through to make my exit. And by the time this guy gets this together, I'm going to be out the door. Be damned to CI. Like I say, every man for himself at that point. So we negotiate. The only thing that I could come up with that I could use against this guy is the number one thing that we all would use against those guys out there that are dealing dope or dealing in stolen merchandise or dealing in anything is what? Is greed. It's not my money. I used to call it Uncle Mitch's money. He was the governor of the state of Indiana. I said, here, have some Uncle Mitch's money. So I gave him a couple $100 more than what the dope was for, got the little baggie, bought it, got out, got in the car. And at this particular point, we're going to do a search warrant. So I'm going to get my team together. We're just going to go blow the house up and arrest everybody in it and move on. So I get on the radio and I call for my surveillance guys. No answer. I call again. No answer. I go to the, now, okay, now don't be laughing. I go to the payphone and I call the office. Who answers the phone at the office? The surveillance team leader. Where are you at? I'm at the office. Well, we were going to, oh yeah, we got something else. They left me. They left me there. Fortunate enough for me that this played in a role and I got out of the situation. Wasn't real happy with the gang, but that's the way it went back then. We didn't do assessments. We didn't do ops plans. We just rode by the seat of our pants. So that's why I talk about, when I talk about these things now, it's not the fact that it's popular, it's the fact that it's the way we do it. I lived it. That and other situations where I was in buying drugs and I'd come out, my team would be gone. Oh, we had another call. We went to buy something else, or we went to do this. And you're on your own. Nowadays, I hope to God we're not doing that. And if we are, we need to reevaluate. But that's what I'm telling you about. And that's what I'm talking about. That's why we're talking about this assessments. When should it be done? It should be done every time. Every time. If it's fluid, but if it's done every time, it should be done every time. If we go to a deal here and we move, we reassess. And as supervisors, where do you come in is, do we make the move? Do we make the move and reassess and go with the information I have? Or do I say, or am I super enough to say, no? Am I super enough to say, I'm calling it, we're not doing it? That's where you come in. That's where you have to make, remember I asked you, I pleaded with you, make a decision. That's where you have to make a decision. Good, bad, or indifferent, popular or not, I got to make a decision, because I want to tell you this. Another day, another way. Another day, another way. You can buy dope. If they're selling it today, they're selling it tomorrow. We're talking about young guys coming in and gals coming in, and we're going to run through this pretty quick. And for you supervisors, I know that this is something that you can do, that you can help with, but assuming identity and a credibility on the undercover side. Selecting and establish your assumed identity, background stories, helping them out with that if you have one. I found though, and the reason we're not going to spend a lot of time on this is we are going from more controlled buys than we are hand-to-hand buys. And a situation like that, I think back when I worked, we did strictly hand-to-hand because we wanted to get rid of the informant. You go to court, you didn't have to deal with that. It's like, yeah, he sold the police officer drugs. And back then they trusted the police pretty much. And if that was the word, that was the word. But now it's more of you're dealing with the informants, doing control buys and things of that nature. But if you do have an assumed identity, let's say fictitious driver's license, IDs, things like that, you want to make sure that your guys, when you talk to them, understand about their background stories and the characteristics thereof. Determine your background story. Make sure that your supervisor and partner, in case they know, and try to maintain the same story so that you're not reinventing it, so that you remember it, so that things will flow with that. So in case you're called out or called by that name or by that, you remember what you're saying. I know that we do a lot of the basic undercover class. If you guys have not had an opportunity to attend Top Gun at the NCTC, you may want to look at that. It's a great program. It's 7 days. It's unbelievable. I participated in that back with Pennsylvania. I went into Maryland's Top Gun, Pennsylvania's Top Gun, attended 2 Pennsylvania Top Guns, and was a participant squad leader in Maryland's Top Gun. So it's a fantastic training opportunity for young narcotics officers to come in and do that. And that would be a plus there. It's hard to get in, but if you can get in, that would be great. Covert name and cities are remembered, and now what you want you will respond to. So like I said, that you won't forget. Try a real first name, fictitious last name. It can be used over long periods of time. Identity should allow the covert operator to live within the general area of income that as a suspect. Some of the stories that come out, and again, this may not apply to today. This may not apply to you. So if it doesn't, just kind of give it some, put it back here and hold on to it in case it comes up to where you need that. Obtain official documentation for fictitious identities. Driver's license. I know I've still got mine. Don't tell them if I was supposed to turn those in, but I didn't turn them in. I got mine here. The ones, my very first one all the way up to my very last one. I've got a couple of concealed carry, fake concealed carry documents. So those things right there. Social security numbers are tough to come by because of 9/11. They changed the whole attitude about having that and not being able to get a fake social security number. So some of the things we're talking about just for undercover purposes. This video that you're about to see is from the Untouchables, and you may recognize, you may have seen it, but like I told you before, when I talk about the fact that my greatest accomplishment as a police officer, and there's several, and I don't want to stand here and brag about what I did, but there's several accomplishments. But my number one accomplishment was that nobody on my squad or nobody that worked with me was hurt. Everybody went home that evening. So take a peek at this and tell me what you think.
You're more important. But I'm not doing it right now. You understand each other? Okay, pal, why don't I ask you? I need packing the gun, but treasury on. All right. Remember what we talked about now. Wait, what the hell kind of teach you have? Now, what do they teach you? You just turn your back on an armed man. How do you know that? I just told you who I was. Who was claiming to be that? He was not. What's your name and name? It's like me. You're gonna be first. It's known as you Russian police work. And you came down. You going home now? All right. You just proved the first rule of law enforcement. Make sure when your shift is over, you go home alive. You're end of the line.
That's pretty much the point of it. That's the most important of it right there. Make sure that that happens. And a lot of that depends on us. A lot of that depends on how we control the situation. And again, there's that word. Do we have control of that? Yes. It all depends on how we, as supervisors, control that situation and make sure that happens. Risk management, risk for reward. What are we talking about there? What are we talking about? Risk for reward. What are we looking at to achieve? What are we wanting to achieve with that? Are the risks worth the reward? It all depends on how you look at it. Again, I go back to saying this, gram deal or kilo deal. They were all the same to me. At the end of the day, what I would tell my guys was this. I really didn't care if there was a semi-trailer parked out back with 4,000 pounds of weed in it or $4 million or what have you in it. It's the same scenario from the beginning. It's the same thing. We start from the beginning, we find the middle, and we try to reach it to the end. That's what I looked for. I didn't get excited about as a manager, as a supervisor. I didn't get excited about the amount of dope. To them, you know, they say there's $4 million in there. I'd probably walk off to the back and go, whoa. But to them, I didn't present that because I didn't want to get them all amped up and overstepping things and forgetting to do things in a hurry to get where they wanted to be. Risk for reward. How is it possible for us to get in there? Is it going to be too much of a risk for us? Do we need to call in some specialties, the ERT team, SWAT team, what have you? Do we need to take more time? Is this the way of the investigation we should go, or should we look at other opportunities, other ways to get into that location or to handle that location? When we know to move forward with the deal, do we proceed with it? Do we look at how do we get there? I know for a fact that we will sit there and talk to the bad guy, whether it be through the informant or through the agent, and we will give them ample opportunity to sell drugs. Well, call them back. Well, wait for them. Well, call them back. Well, and we do that to a point of nausea. And our guys are getting to the point where they're getting frustrated because the guy's not showing up, they're getting mad, or they're getting amped up. And as a supervisor, we have to feel that. We have to feel that and point to where, okay, and my thing was, I'm going to give them 5 more minutes. I'm going to give them 5 more minutes. If they don't show up in 5 minutes, we're out of here. And it worked. It pissed a lot of people off, but it worked because another day, another way. And you have to feel that and see which direction that's going in. And as you guys well know, the more amped up you get, the more amped up they get, the more things are going to happen. They're going to move quickly. How to evaluate the red flags with that? What am I looking for? What are the things, the pitfalls, the red flags that are going to pop up? You know, and we've been out there long enough to know this just don't feel right. This feels like it's a rip and not a deal, or this feels like the informant has lied to us and things aren't going to go the way we're supposed to go. With those red flags, though, as a supervisor, those are the things you're evaluating. Because again, you're responsible for everybody. And I want you to be 3 steps out here, not right here. Tracking with me? I want you to be 3 steps out here. I want you to be thinking like it's a chess game. What's next? Where's the next move? What are we going to do? I've got all my guys calling in from everywhere, telling me what's going on. Case agent, surveillance team leader, undercover, CI handler. Everybody's coming to me. Hey, boss, hey, boss, hey, boss. I can't focus just on one thing. I got to focus on everything. And what's next? Where's that move? My surveillance team. I have to know if they move and somebody moves out, or somebody's got to go to the bathroom. Who do I plug in? So those things like that, that's what I have to be doing. I have to make those calls and make those decisions to either move forward or to stop. And again, everything is fluid. This whole thing is fluid. That's what makes it, that's to me was the coolest part. I mean, you're constantly thinking, you're constantly moving forward. This might change. Okay, how do I reevaluate? and we do this, or this is going to change, or that's going to change. And to me, it was one of those deals where you're outsmarting the bad guy. You're just thinking through it. You're just moving forward. You're trying to do the deal. The covert operator, and I use covert operator instead of undercover because, again, you're doing a lot of controlled buys and not necessarily undercover buys. And to me, undercover is deeper than a covert op. We don't do a lot of undercover stuff anymore. Or you guys do, let me know. But most of our stuff is covert. Undercover ops is working at the Outlaw Motorcycle Club when the president was murdered, and you end up getting a tattoo from the pizza tattoo place at the Outlaw Motorcycle Club down in Indy. It's right here, the little Tasmanian guy. That's undercover. Undercover's working cockfights in the Hispanic neighborhood by living with one of the guys that was raising the roosters. That's undercover. So to me, these things are covert ops. So when I talk about when you see covert operator, that's what that relates to. Who can abort the op still as it's going along at any time? Anybody can, right? Not just the covert operator, but the supervisor, team leader, case agent, surveillance team leader. Anybody can call it. Anybody can call it. If the covert operator, he calls it, doesn't feel right. And again, sometimes it just don't feel right. You got that feeling where it doesn't feel right, and they can call it based on that gut feeling. But at that point, nobody wants to make the walk of shame, do they? They really don't. They don't want to come back and the deal didn't go through, and I didn't buy it, and oh, what's wrong? Was you scared? Was you? Don't criticize the covert operator in front of other people, right? We want to criticize him and praise him, okay? So let's do that and think about that. The case agent or supervisor also have the ability to cancel the deal away from the covert operator. Sometimes the covert guy gets a little bit overzealous. Sometimes he gets amped up and he's wanting to do the deal, wanting to make things happen. And he does that to a point where we get in a situation where he wants to move, and we all know this. We say, don't trip, don't move, don't move. Well, sometimes it's the covert operator that makes those moves because their focus is here. Their focus is here instead of looking at out here, all right? They get tunnel vision wanting to get that dope deal. So sometimes as a supervisor, you have to step up and say, hey, look, we're done. We are finished. Example with that, I think I talked to you guys and told you that I had the interdiction guys. And those guys are just, it's like, to me, it was like I had 13 horses and I'm riding on a chariot. And they are just going full speed. That's what they did. They just went full speed every time. And we had a deal that came out of Missouri. What we used to do controlled deals out of Missouri, controlled deliveries. If they stopped somebody in Missouri, mostly coming out of Colorado in that area, transporting marijuana, they would call us and say, hey, you guys want to do a controlled delivery? He's coming to Indiana. Or we've even gone from Missouri to New York. I did a 400-pound marijuana thing. We flew to New York on the governor's plane, met with DEA, and I went down into Queens, Jamaica, and delivered the dope to them, got on the plane and flew back. But with the interdiction guys, they don't know when to stop. They're just continually going. And that's where you get that tunnel vision. And that's where you have to say, hey, look, not for nothing, but it's over. It's done. We're calling it. I did that to one of my guys, one of my alpha male guys. And I called it. And the thing that got me was the fact that he continued to organize the guys to keep going, but he did it in front of the other officers from Missouri. And I had to call him on the phone in no uncertain terms and let him know that to meet at the office and we were finished. And when we got to the office, I had to explain to him that he was a corporal and I was a first sergeant, and to never, ever do that again. So again, it's not a popularity contest, but it's a situation of safety. The longer you go, the more amped up they get, and you're starting to put that fatigue factor in there too. So we got to look at all those aspects. At the debriefing, we always want to have a debriefing if the deal's called off. We want to learn what happened mostly. We want to see where the red flags were, what happened, and how can we overcome it in the future? How can we do better in the future? There's some red flags you need to look for. We'll take a break here in a couple minutes. Let me run through this one slide and we'll take a break. The location. That's we control that, don't we? We control the location. We control what we want to meet. And that's one thing I want to point out too, at supervisors. That's what we can control. We can control where we meet. We can control the time, the location, who we meet, when we meet. And the reason I say that is because some of this, most of the other stuff out there, we can't control. We have no control where the guy shows up, where the guy doesn't show up, weather, crowds, traffic management. So in our assessment, those are all the things we need to look at, but we can control the location. All right, we can control that. A crowded park with lots of kids, common sense. Citizens around busy shopping center, strip malls, we don't want to do that. And you guys know that, just some of the referral stuff. So my younger, basically putting it down here in a nutshell, before we take a break here, is my younger guys and gals out there. Let's make sure that you have the ability to step up and say something when needed. Okay, make sure you have some step up and say something when needed, so that you can control some of the things that you can control and make those happen. I don't know about you, but is this break time already? Maybe about 11:30. Yeah, well, let's do it anyway. We'll take a quick break and we'll start back over. I can get my bearings back. All right, thank you. Drug deal go bad in the mall here in South Bend, Indiana, and ends up with the narcs and people running, undercover officers running through the mall with shotguns and guns and things like that, and the public really didn't care for it. So be conscious of that when we go. The other thing too is dealer promises to deliver anything you want, any amounts. We all know that could possibly be a rip, especially for small town dealers. The one thing that I want to make sure that we talk about too, when we're talking about supervising young narcs or young agents that are out doing deals and working, there is a, before we jumped into this, but there is a CI block that goes with this course, but because of the 2-day, 4-hour blocks, I had to cut that out in order to get what I thought was relevant to you today into this course of instruction, because that would have took a lot of time. So if you want to check, if you want some information on dealing with handling CIs, PLE, we put on a 2-day CI course, so you can jump in and see, check that out too. This will be something that we look at with our younger guys, because even if you're doing a covert deal, you're doing a control deal, and you're dealing with CIs, that influence that the CI gives the young investigator is going to reflect on that too. So remember, we talked about listening and talking and understanding and getting that information from our subordinates of what's going on with your case, what's happening, what are you hearing, what are you doing? So you can kind of judge if that information is coming from the CI to the covert, or just from the covert about where he's at. And you're looking at certain deals, certain things for that. One thing that leads to this, prices that don't match, or like you're trying to get something that's cheap and you don't know that you need, as a supervisor and as agents, need to know the prices of the drugs in your area. Not only the drugs, but what they're selling stolen merchandise for, how much they're selling it on the dollar, when you're talking about deals and this covert work. But know that, because if it's too good to be true, then it's probably going to be a rip. If it's too good to be true, they're probably going to rip you, and bad things can happen during that course. The other thing is keep it business as usual. Keep it business as what the information is as it comes through. If the guy is dealing pounds, then he's dealing pounds. If he's dealing pounds of weed, he's dealing pounds of weed. If he's dealing ecstasy, whatever he's dealing, keep it in that arena. All right. And have your guys Make sure that you instruct people not to be shopping like they're at CVS, like this is a pharmacy. Well, can you get this? Well, can you get that? Well, can you buy this? Well, can you do that? Especially the first couple buys. You know, if you're gonna order up a bunch of stuff, order it up at the end, because if it's going to be a buy bust, or you're going to take them off at that point, try to get them with as much stuff as you can. But if not, keep it business as usual. The one thing I found, as I said in the briefings and listening to the other agents putting together their cases and having the briefing, is when they start talking about, well, can you get, what are you supposed to buy? Well, we're buying an 8-ball of cocaine. And the supervisor or the team leader says, well, hey, can you get this? You think you can get this from him? Or do you think you can get that from him? Try not to do that. Because what you're doing is you're forcing that individual to do something that he may not be able to do. And then you're starting to fall into that entrapment issue. You're starting to fall into that arena. Then you're giving the bad guy the thought process of, well, you know what? Hey, if I tell this guy I got 20,000 pounds of dope and he believes it and brings $40,000, that's $40,000 in my pocket. Think about that aspect of it. And the other thing that I'm going to throw out there too, and you may not like it, but I'm going to throw it out there anyway, is the gun thing. So many times that you're trying to get that trigger lock on the guy, or a felon with a firearm or a handgun. And if he's dealing dope and you throw a gun in there, all you're doing is, when you're looking at this assessment, risk for reward, all you're doing is throwing that other tangible in there that probably really shouldn't be there. If the guy proclaims he can get you a gun, or he's, yeah, I deal guns, I can get you all the guns you want, separate the dope from the gun. Yeah, I know it gives them more, or used to. Nowadays, I don't know, in your area, it gives them, bumps up their charges and that if they've got a gun associated with dope. If it's a felon and he's selling guns, take what you got, take what you can. I know a lot of bad things happen when you try to throw that gun charge in there to get the trigger lock, or you're buying dope and you bump into an ATF officer, and you want somebody to come in for the resources or the money, and you throw an ATF guy in there, or DEA, and the first thing they want to do is throw a gun in. Let's put a gun in there. If you got experienced guys that can handle that, it's one thing, but if you're out doing supervising younger guys, or you're supervising a team that does that, doesn't specialize in guns, some of you may be on the ATF task force and that's all you buy is guns. That's great. But for folks that aren't, let's keep an eye on that and see where we go with that, okay? Risk management, dealer offers drugs at a really low price. Again, that's a red flag. Selling the same amount, deconfliction. How many folks here do deconfliction in your area? I hope you do. For those that don't know what deconfliction is, basically our guard unit here over at the HIDA, they'll do that for you. And there's other agencies that have association with that, with the intel folk. A lot of people don't like doing it because they think that they're giving up their case. Oh, this is my baby. I'm not going to let it go. It's a safety aspect. We had to work through that in our area, and I was at the time first sergeant in the North Zone of Indiana, which would go all the way down to Indianapolis, up to Michigan, from Ohio to Illinois. I had the whole northern part of the state when I was first sergeant, and this is before deconfliction. And I want to tell you, it's a scary thing when you get a bunch of people, a bunch of police officers buying off the same guy, or I'm selling to another department, or a department selling to me, and you don't know they're cops, the blue on blue. That's a scary deal. Now, I know a lot of folks do deconfliction. If you don't, you might want to consider that heavily. If you do, great. A lot of guys, like I said, don't want to do it because it's efficient. They think that it's efficient exposition from other agencies. It's not. My philosophy was back in the day was that as long as they got, I didn't care who got them. I didn't care if something I had that piece of the puzzle I could give another agency, and they can arrest the guy, and I'd move on. As long as he went to jail, it was okay with me. You got the blue on blue thing that you have to look at. If a dealer changes the way he does business, the way he moves things. That's something to look at as far as red flags. Also, too, is that when we talked about changing locations, we talked about tripping, we used to call it, don't trip, don't trip, don't trip. Sometimes you can, depending on where you're at. If you set up a location that you can control, again, the control goes with everything you do in that aspect as far as from our side. If you can control the move, then it's okay to trip. If I was doing it, and as I did, I would say I'm only going to trip twice. That's it. If it goes into 3 or 4 times, I'm not tripping. And the only way that I would ever trip was that if I could carry my surveillance team with me. All right, think of it that way. Think about 12, 6, 3, and 9, which creates a box. If I could take my box with me and I can move that box and set it over here where we're going to trip at and give that surveillance team time to set up, time to evaluate the area, time to see what's going on, and then say to my undercover or my covert, yeah, okay, come on in. That's the only way. Otherwise, it didn't happen. If we would change locations and the bad guy says, no, follow me, take me over here or take you a certain place, that's definitely a red flag. It is a red flag where you're following somebody and they keep moving in location. You folks know that. But the one thing about it is, as a supervisor, we have to be able to say, hey, well, time out. No. We're not tripping. We're not moving again. So we can reevaluate and start over with our assessment. Here's a situation, and you guys have probably seen this. Again, my videos are somewhat older, but they're relevant. And I know for a fact that I can get on YouTube and search for 3 months and find different videos that assert the same thing or proclaim the same thing, that are all modern and all that, but they work. It's the same idea, same concept, same things going on, just a different era. So take a peek at this and tell me what you think on here.
In this drug thing, a lone undercover agent with no gun and no bulletproof vest narrowly escaped death when a drug dealer reveals a weapon. But amazingly, the bullets only grazed the unprotected operative. This is the chance every undercover agent has to take. The drug dealer lines up another shot, but the agent kicks at him, and the shot goes wide. What the drug dealer doesn't know is that a second team of agents is monitoring this thing from the next room. A high-tech video surveillance system allows them to react quickly. That action saves the life of the undercover officer.
All right. That situation sometimes can't be helped if that's what's going to happen. If they're coming at you to get you, they're going to get you. One thing we kind of talk about is what was the scene prior to that? What did the surveillance team see? You're talking about the guy with the jacket. You're talking about coming in. Was it jacket weather? The bag that he carried, was that business as usual? Did that look the same as it did the last time? Is that how it was happening before? Did he change it up? Those are the things that I want to look at as a supervisor or case agent when I'm out there. And that's the thing that I want to instruct my guys on as we go along, as far as their training there and what they're seeing. The guy in the hotel room, that situation, once he came in with the gun, it's pretty much, survival at the most. We used to do a lot of deals in hotels. We used to do the joint rooms where we would rent one room for the equipment, and we put the takedown team into one side, and then the undercover ops would work in the other room. As a matter of fact, I've done probably 40 or 50 of them in that same situation there. And it was pretty hairy at times, but in general, we had it planned out to where it worked out fairly well for us. Anywhere from kilos to thousands and thousands of pounds of dope. We preferred hotels because we could control it. especially if it was a hotel on a certain floor where the only way down was the elevator or the stairwells, and we could cover that. We had it covered. We've gotten away from using hotels much now. We've gone out in the public and doing Walmart parking lots, McDonald's, things of that nature. And that's where we're at now. So we can choose the location and we can make the location ours. But again, what does it take in order to make it safe for us to do that in that arena? This is kind of a funny thing. I get a lot of laughs in person when we're doing the classes. When you have perceived a threat capable of causing serious physical danger or death, stupid. That's usually what they look at me like. When do you take out your firearm? Well, I found that during the course of my career, sometimes my guys didn't even show up with the firearm. Or they would show up with the firearm in the little compartment in the pickup truck or the car on the door. And they forget that it was there, or they had to go back out and retrieve it. I found that guys haven't even qualified with the firearm they're carrying. I've inspected firearms and found that they didn't even function because they weren't clean or they weren't oiled properly. So, yeah, that's the question. When do you take it out? The first thing and foremost is it functional? Have you qualified with it? Do you know where to carry it? Because usually at this point, I'll ask folks, how many holsters do you have for your handguns? You have more than 10, more than 5, more than 3. I get a lot of hands up in the air. And I'll ask them, how many firearms do you have? How many handguns do you have? Do you have 10? You have 5? You have 3? And so on and so on. And the point I'm trying to make is this. A lot of times we'll get new folks in, new agents that come in, and cops like shiny stuff, new stuff, the latest stuff. And they'll get a handgun and a holster that they've never practiced from, that they've never shot from. I know for a fact I carried my Glock 23 in my ankle, an ankle holster. Matter of fact, it's sitting on the counter over here. I carry it with me every day from the same position mostly. Every now and then it's on my hip. And that's where I carried it all the time. When I worked undercover, I carried it in the small of my back in a little pancake holster. Carried it all the time. I fired from that. We talked about training. Can we go out and do the same training fundamentally? If I have any firearms instructors out there listening, can we go out and do the same firearms training working in a covert ops situation that we do working the road? No. Because when we go out there and it's ready on the right, ready on the left, fire, that ain't going to work very well for us in an undercover capacity or covert ops capacity. We have to be able to shoot from different positions. We have to be able to shoot wearing the clothes that we wear, whether they're jeans or shorts, or in the summertime especially. Where do we conceal our weapon? How do we conceal our weapon? What do we conceal our weapon with? What holsters? What types do we use? Those things are relevant in the situation when it hits the fan, because we need to react to that. I need my guys to be able to react. I know I had some great firearms instructors that I would get with, and I'd say, hey, look, we need to set up a scenario where we're in this room and we're shooting, or we're in a car, because that's where a lot of the dope deals go down from, in a vehicle, around a vehicle, laying on your back, laying on your stomach, prone, on the back, on your knees, what have you, in order to be able to actually train and get that muscle memory and get that thought process going in case things got bad out there in an undercover way. And they did. We put together a bunch of good shooting scenarios and things of that nature, and it worked out well. Something to think about. Just have people come to me and hey boss, you have an extra gun? Yeah. Well, can I borrow it? I left mine at home. I forgot it. Okay. No, but you can go home and get it. Then I'll see you tomorrow after you use your comp time or your vacation time because you forgot your weapon, your vest, your weapon, your gun, you name it. So that's just something to think about. I know this does get a lot of like chuckles and, well, yeah, when somebody, but no, as a supervisor, I've got to be looking out for that. I've got to be watching, make sure my guys are prepared. I got to make sure that they have the proper equipment to do the job and do it safely. Will you be armed when you're out working covertly or when you're in undercover capacity? Do you wear a gun? Are there situations where you may have a guy come to you and say, I'm not comfortable going out on the first deal with a gun because they might pat me down or what have you. I wouldn't let anybody get it close enough to me to pat me down in that regard. And if they wanted to pat me down, we'd play patty cake back and forth, or I just, you know what, it ain't worth it. Everybody's got a gun out there now, especially. What kind of gun you're going to carry? How are you going to conceal it? Where are you going to hide it? Where are you going to keep it at? Those are the things that you want to address with your folks and ask them openly, because sometimes when the guys come off of the road into narcotics, they still have that road mentality. They still have that muscle memory of that weapon being right there on that duty belt right there. And that's the first place they're going to go if something happens, is right there. So it goes back to providing training, right? Training for that individual. We have to refocus on where that muscle memory goes to where that weapon's at. Do you have easy access to it? Do you know how to get to that ankle holster or carrying it in the back? Is that where you're going to carry it? Is that where you're going to have it? One thing I would point out before we go do the deal, I'd always talk to my undercover guy or my covert op, and we do a walk. I say, let's go for a walk. We walk around and say, okay, how you feeling? You feeling okay? Everything okay? Did we go through the briefing okay? Are you all right with it? Did we cover everything? Hey, where are you going to have your weapon? Where are you going to do? Just something to refocus their thought process to get them to thinking about that, in opposed to making that buy or going out doing the deal. Have you practiced getting your weapon out from the concealed carry position? Have you practiced that way? Had a officer, it's not funny, but okay, it is funny now, but had an officer come in and he wanted to work undercover from another department. And he come to me and he says, hey, he says, I'm thinking about putting in for an art job at PD, and they got an opening, and I think I want to work narcotics. Okay. And he was a gun guy. He was a firearms instructor, as a matter of fact. And he came to me and he says, hey, he says, where do you carry your weapon? I said, well, I carry it, small on my back. I got a little pancake holster that fits, clips on the belt and goes in the back, and that's where I carry it 99% of the time. Okay, he says, well, I got to get used to carrying. I said, well, wherever you carry it, make sure you practice with it so that, when it comes to it, you got muscle memory, you know where to get it. You're not going to go hesitate and try to find your weapon. He said, okay, so one day he calls me up and he says, hey, he says, me and another guy, one of the deputies is going out to our range. You want to go? Well, smell of gunpowder to me is quite refreshing. I'm like, yeah, I'll go in. So I go out and we go out and we meet, and we're shooting, and we're having a good time and wasting a lot of bullets. And finally he comes up to me and says, hey, he says, I want to practice getting my gun from where I want to carry it. And I think I'm going to carry it small on my back. So, okay. I said, do you have a holster? He says, oh, no, I don't need one right now. I said, yeah. I said, I think you need to put in a holster. No, I'm good. Okay. So he stuck the gun in his belt and small of his back here. And he had one of those little boxes. If you got any shooters out there, it's a timer box. You push the button, it tells you how fast your shot's going off and things like that. So he tells me, he says, well, get up there and draw and see how fast you can, draw and shoot. So, okay, no problem. So he pushes the button. I whip out, do some good shooting, hit the target pretty well, pretty quick. He goes, oh, that was pretty good. So it says, here, you take the box, you push this button, and when you push the button, I'll go. So, okay. So I take the box. I said, you ready? He goes, yeah. I push the button. He goes, shoots himself in the cheek, on the right side of his cheek and his buttocks, as Forrest Gump would say. Went through the top and came out the bottom, just above his hip bone. Through the meat of his cheek, no bone damage, no nerve damage. So at that point in time, we got to take him to the hospital. So we take him to the hospital, and he's the firearms instructor of the PD that the hospital's in, and everybody knows him, and everybody knows us. So the moral of the story is, you've got to practice the more you carry it. You got to have the proper equipment, and it's our responsibility as supervisors to make sure that they do. All right. To have more than one weapon. How many guns can you carry undercover? I don't know. I had several in my vehicle, in my patrol, in my duty vehicle, but in my buy vehicle, it was always sanitized, and I just had the one. Something to think about there. The other thing that I want to talk about too is, how many of you have an extraction kit? Now that we're talking about firearms and things of that nature, but how many of you have an extraction kit? And what I mean by that is a hooligan bar, wedge, ram, things like that. Well, Tom, you know, we don't have one because the department won't buy one. I can't afford one. But do you know that you can go to Home Depot, Lowe's, or Menards and ask them to donate a sledgehammer, pry bars, things of that nature, and they probably will. Think about that too. Think about if you don't have a hooligan bar or a kit. I was fortunate enough to have the ability to purchase, each sergeant had an extraction kit, and a ram, hooligan bar, pry bar, and a scrape bar in this backpack kit that fit on your back. Each sergeant was responsible for that, and every time they went to a deal. So something to think about there when we're thinking about the safety parts of it. DEA came up with 7 critical factors, and we'll talk about those. Most importantly, I want you to listen to some of these that come along. And these are the things that we have to look at and make sure that we understand those too. And number 1 is inadequate operational planning. That's something that we really, really want to look into, especially now. And hopefully everybody's doing ops plans. Arrests made from the covert op posture. Mismanagement of flash roll and money. We don't use many flash rolls anymore. I don't think. You guys, if you do, that's great. But making sure you keep track of the flash roll or your buy money. We'll talk about that. Two-way communication so that we're all on the same sheet of music. And the one I'm going to talk about quite a bit is complacency. I'm going to talk about complacency pretty well. We've covered a little bit of the weapon accessibility and inaccurate conclusions. We'll talk about that, okay? And number 1 is inadequate operational planning. Hopefully everybody does an ops plan, please. If you don't, you might want to think about it. I'm pretty sure you do. And once it's set, is it got to be followed by the letter, yes or no? Well, we say no, because really everything is fluid. What I want on the ops plan is I want everything relevant to the information and the intelligence I have at the time. You tracking with me? Based on my homework. What have I got on that ops plan that I have to have all those boxes filled in? Not NA in those boxes or a line through a box that has a question. Vehicles, plates, location, homes, houses, bad guy, good guy, whatever. Try to look at that as a supervisor to evaluate that. And if it's just got generic information on it, we don't want generics. We want it to be filled out properly. The one thing about an ops plan is this, and think about it as supervisors. What an ops plan does is it forces an individual, case agent or covert op, to compile the information on a piece of paper, compile the information that's needed. And it also slows them down because it forces them to do the ops plan and it forces them to slow down instead of just saying, okay, yeah, we did a buy here. Remember the heroin house, the Trojan horse, the heroin house? It forces them to slow down before they go boom, 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 boom to the next one, all right? And most often it's that deviates from the tactical plan. It's most often the covert op because they feel that they're in control of everything. They're in control, but in actuality, this is what they've got. They've got tunnel vision because all they're thinking about is that buy, is meeting that bad guy making that buy, or taking that CI with them to make that buy. And they're not looking at this. That's where we come in as supervisors. We, again, have to be looking at everything that's going on. We have to be involved in everything. And that was the wild part about, excuse me, that was the wild part about being out there, honestly. The radio's going off, you're listening to the Kel set, you're listening to people talk, the surveillance team's moving, this person's talking, and all that's going through your head, and yet you're supposed to be figuring out what's going on and who's what and where, right? To me, that was the fun time. That was the fun time, trying to put everything in motion to be successful. Making arrests as a covert operator. Not so much anymore. We don't do that much anymore, I don't think. I know that we used to. A guy would get in the car, we'd make the buy, and stick a gun in his head and tell him we're the police and I'm going to take you to jail. In our undercover vehicle, we take you down and lock you up. Done it before. Don't do it anymore. And the reason for it is, if I've done my job really well, the bad guy thinks I'm a bad guy. And in today's environment, he may conclude that he's being ripped off, so he's going to shoot me because I'm a bad guy. And he'll probably get off from him because I didn't identify myself as the police, or he didn't believe I was the police, or that. So that's what the takedown team's before. That's what the takedown team's for. We want to make sure we've got a plan for that, and that's going to be activated. So making an arrest from a covert operator's stance, I highly recommend we don't do that. And you guys probably aren't. Some of this stuff to use probably old school stuff, or that we don't do it anymore, but you'd be surprised how many times it's happened, and it still happens. Now, we talk about risk assessment, we talk about doing our jobs and doing it well. This is a perfect example of what we've talked about from the beginning this morning. And one of the things I want you to look at is when we talked about putting people in a certain position, right? Having them go out and be in a position or in a situation they may not be comfortable with. We talked about that. We talked about them going out and playing a role or doing something in a covert ops way. Preparation, how we prepared ourselves, how we looked for red flags, how we did things. The opportunity to have the money, to know when to show the money, or know when to give up the money, or know when to say we have money, right? We talked about that, and we're now into the critical factors of what we should do. This is a very good video on how things go. And I would like for you to, if you have pen and paper or not, just put to memory, write down some of the red flags that you catch listening to the audio on this video as you watch. There should be 7 or 8 things that you pick up on that should be taken care of prior to. And at the end of the video, we'll discuss that, okay?
I'm actually going to get up to 6 and out game. We'll turn off the radio. Dave, how's it, Kelson?
see if it become, down the house, say, put out the title to the guy.
Okay. Be advised, I'm gonna go for 2 bundles. You ain't got to just give me 1 bundle. I'm approaching 7th Street.
Well, you need to, kind of write it.
I'm on 6 and 2nd. I'm gonna turn the radio off. Be advised, how far up's in the air?
Indiana seven, I see about, 2 or 3 blocks down.
Receive, I'm at 6th Street. I'm turning off the radio. Be advised, I'm on 6th Street. When I go through this light, yeah, I'm going through this light. Guys advertise all hell over. I hope I didn't pass it. I'm at Indiana right now, we're making it right. Making it right on Indiana. I'm past Marshall Street. What's that up in Indiana? Past Franklin Street, I'm at Franklin, stopped at the light. Be advised, I'm passing 8. I'm going up to the location where Turpin's going over to the right. Turpin, well, how many? Can I get 2 bundles? Well, I'm not a bundle right now. Let me see what he got here. Is that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Let me play. How much for it? You got no more? No. That's it? You sure? Sure, man. I'm gonna take away 8, guy. All right, bro. No, you give me 70. I got 8. No, take 70. 78. No. Turn the money. Turn the money.
How many did he give him? 8. There goes the camera that was in the vehicle. After we looked at it, this was in Philly. As a matter of fact, I had some folks in prior classes that knew where this location was and knew what went down through there. And again, same scenario. It's a high drug activity area. Guys like to go down there and buy dope, and then buy dope off of certain individuals, and then go back and arrest them. So let's talk about this as we go forward and see as observers and supervisors specifically. Let me ask you a few questions like we went through. right from the beginning. What about the vehicle that he was using? What do you think about that? Was he fit for the vehicle? Did they sterilize the vehicle? Did he have prior use of the vehicle? No. What this was an agent that came in that they used just to do this undercover shot and threw him in the vehicle and off he went. And how many folks have done that before? I've done that before. As a supervisor, I'm going to put an agent in this situation. I think I want to review a few things, get some things squared away. Remember, I talked about the walk. You know, I would walk with my guy and say, before he got in that car or afterwards, say, hey, what do you think? How do you feel? What's going on? The other thing is the location. Going down in those certain areas, did you think that he felt comfortable going down in there? Do you think he felt comfortable in that area? I know there's times where I was in areas that I didn't feel comfortable with at all. And I can honestly say I've been in about every place. And I just didn't feel comfortable. I've been to, like I said, the guy that was raised in having the cockfights and hanging out with him and basically living there. There's times I just didn't feel comfortable when they, have you come around back to stick a gun in your chest or stick a gun up your head and laugh and joke about how they were kidding and just to see what your reaction was. Going into Elwood, Indiana, which used to be the Ku Klux Klan capital of Indiana, probably still is, and going into the Jolly Roger Tavern, and they had a mannequin above the bar, a mannequin head with painted black with an afro wig on the mannequin above the bar with various other Ku Klux Klan memorabilia, and buying stolen property from that location being there. So I can flat tell you, being in some of the areas in East Chicago and South side of Chicago, Gary, Detroit, I wasn't real comfortable. But prior planning prevents what? Piss poor performance. So as a supervisor now, I wanted to know these things. I wanted to know what they was coming up with. Did he know where he was going? Did he know where he was going? Did they do a previous recon on that location? Doesn't sound like to me they did. Every opportunity now to put some of your undercover in a van or in the best place to put an undercover officer to drive through a neighborhood like that is in the back of a patrol car. Let them look out the window of the back of patrol cars, because the patrol car goes down in that area, they're not even going to pay any attention to you. They're not even going to look one way. But you send a car down through there with tinted windows, boom, they're going to be on you. If you send him down through there in a patrol car, sitting in the back seat like he's cuffed, he can look around, you can find a description, you can talk about where he's going. He didn't feel comfortable in that area. He didn't feel comfortable going down there, I feel. His comfort level was way down. I just don't think he was the right guy for the right location. What about I gave him 8? Did he give him 8? It looked to me like, Turbo did a flam on it. It looked like he double counted a bill, which shorted him out. Again, whose money is it? It wasn't my money. It was Uncle Mitch's money. If I gave him 8 and he wanted another one, I give him another one. Why get in a pissing match with a guy over $20, especially in that neighborhood? You got dope in hand. If he wanted more, give him more money. As long as he's not sticking a gun in my face, it's not going to bother me one bit to give him an extra 20. As a matter of fact, using DEA money, we were down in Indianapolis going to go make a buy, and I had DEA money in one pocket. Well, it's a funny thing. I got $3,000 in this pocket. I got about $1,500 in this pocket, and I got about 30 cents that belonged to me. If you guys can relate to that, right? So we're going to go down and buy this, I think it was about $1,000 worth of cocaine. And we go down to a certain neighborhood, and I'm sitting, actually it was down 38th Street, down in the 38th and Keystone area. And I go down, I'm sitting there, getting pre-staged and getting ready to go in and do the deal. And as I'm sitting there, I get this crackhead hooker jump in my car. Why I had the door unlocked, I don't know, but I did. And she was in there that quick. jumped in the car, threw the door open, plopped down in the seat, wanted a bum of smoke, so I gave her a cigarette. She tells me that she reaches over and grabs my crotch and says, I'll work for that. I'll work for that, $20. I'm thinking to myself, well, no. But I tell you what, I'll give you $20 to get out of my car. Is it my money? No. It was DEA money. So here's 20, take your smoke and get out of my car. So she gets out, we go down, I buy the dope at the dope house, come back, and I get back to the shop, and I tell the DEA agent, I said, hey, not for nothing, but I spent this much on the dope, and I spent this much on the $20 crackhead whore. He about passed out. We don't have the authority to spend that. We shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have did that. Now we got to write a letter to Washington and describe. I don't care. Want my money. As long as I wasn't stealing it, it didn't bother me. But in a situation like this, who cares? All right, give him another 20. What else did you hear? Did you hear what was the takedown signal? Did anybody catch it? Was the takedown signal give him 8? I gave him 8. Was that the signal? Because he said it 40 times. What was the international signal that you picked up on? Anybody pick up on that? I think it was help. I think he actually come out and said help. So those are the things we want to look for before we go into those areas, before we go in and put ourselves and subject ourselves to this type of deal here. What happened was they ripped him off. The backup guys came in. They recovered the camera. They arrested Turbo. No harm, no foul. And again, when we look at these videos and we dissect them and make our observations, I'm not making fun of the guy because I don't know what I would have done down there. Actually, I know what I would have done. Turbo would have been a speed bump and he would have had my money and I've been driving down the road. But anyways, I'm not making fun. It's a learning opportunity to learn. So that's what we'll take it as, all right? Money management. The one thing we do for a fact, and we do for sure, is this. We do two things as cops that we should reevaluate, and you should reevaluate. Number one is we're always on time, aren't we? Are we always on time? Where the agent's saying we got to be there, the deal goes at 3. The informant says it goes at 3. We're at the office or we're at the meeting place. We got people yelling and screaming at each other. We got to go. We got to go. We're supposed to be there at 3. We're late. We got guys driving 80 miles an hour to get to a dope deal, don't we? Think about it. The second thing we do is we always show up with the exact amount of money. And we always show up with money. So let's think about that for a while. Let's talk about that. Money management, time management. Do we have to be there on time? No. Let's think about not being there on time. Let's think about, let's say this is a controlled delivery. And I've got my informant sitting with me and I'm the covert ops. And we're supposed to be there at 3 o'clock. And my informant has already called the individual and he said, hey, we'll be there at 3 o'clock. We'll meet you there at work. Let's say the McDonald's parking lot. And we show up 3 or 4 blocks away from McDonald's. And we sit, and this is what I used to do. We sit and we just watch. And we see, is there any counter surveillance? Is our target rolling through? Is he rolling through with more than himself? Has he got a couple guys in the car? Has he dropped guys off at certain locations? I can observe that. Do I got to be on time? No. Do we got to be on time? No. Because if we're not on time, what's the bad guy going to do? He's probably going to call the informant, isn't he? Where you guys at? I'm here. Where you at? Oh, yeah, we're on our way. About another 15 or 20 minutes. Or whatever you want to tell them. Let's say that through our assessment, we don't know where he's getting his dope from. And we set up a buy. And we show up. And when we show up, we don't meet the guy. We let him sit. Do you think he's going to sit and keep that dope on his person, or is he going to take it back from where he got it? Or is he going to take it back to the stash house? He's going to take it back probably to the stash house, or he's going to go somewhere else to get rid of it. But we can articulate, and for a fact, our surveillance team can put him down at the stash house or meeting another individual. Or if he decides to show up and we don't want to deal with him in that regard, can we have one of our interdiction guys or someone in uniform stop him, shake him down, make his own PC to make the stop him, find the dope, throw him in jail. He's going to get out anyway, and nowadays. So why are we going to look at the risk? Are we looking at the risk factors, the red flags? Like I said before, there's 1,000 ways to do this. That's what made it so cool. There's 1,000 ways to do that. So that's something that we want to think about. The other thing is money. When we give our guys money to go out and to purchase evidence, whether it be drugs, stolen property, guns, what have you, to purchase evidence, they always show up with the right amount. During the course of me supervising my young guys, sometimes they went out and sometimes they didn't take money. Sometimes they didn't even make the meet. Because I want to know the strength of the CI. I want to know what the CI is thinking. Because if the CI is down on his luck, or the CI knows some other bad guys, and he can bring me into the fold, carrying a couple $1,000 or then nowadays, $20 to rip me off or to get rid of a cop, how do we know that? We're weighing those options, finding out, trying to build on the best ability, our intelligence and information on what we know about what's going on. You tracking with me? Think about that. Think about the fact that we always, number one, show up on time. And number two, we always have that same amount of monies. So let's give that some thought, because I think we don't. I think we end up, by doing so many buys and doing so much, it's just kind of habit. Okay, here's the money. Come on, let's go. We got to be there at 3. No, we don't. We can control that. So we need to learn to control what we can control. Okay? Lack of communication. This is a must when we're out buying. The guy that was in the video, he called out location real well. I'm turning here, I'm driving here, I'm going there, which was great. Our communications between our teams out there are good to have. Our communications so that we can communicate and that we can understand what we're doing is all fluid. It's all in one motion. It's going so that everybody's up to speed. I know there's times when I sat and I would be able to visually see someone down the street and I'm trying to talk to him on the phone. I think back then it was the Nextel push and talk, and I can't even communicate with him, and I can see him. So that's the communication thing. The covert operator, as far as him communicating with us, I know that when I was out there buying and I'm driving, I'm pointing out different areas, even with the bad guy in the car. I could point out a new construction. Hey, I didn't know that place was going out of business, or, man, look at that Ferrari or that blue car at this dealership, what have you. Teaching them to communicate in that fashion so that we know what's going on. It's going to help them feel more comfortable. It's going to help them better to feel and to do their job. The other thing I talked about was when you got the covert op with the informant, or the covert op is doing their thing out there, and I'm listening as a supervisor, I should be able to tell when things are amped up. I should be able to tell when things are going wrong just by listening to the agent. All right? Just by listening to the agent, by the demeanor that the agent has about how they're coming across, even down to the breathing, that something just isn't right. And I need to start making plans to formulate, okay, what's this going to turn into? In opposed to working behind it, I'm trying to be in front of it. Okay, that's my job to do. That's my job, is to supervise those people out there to make that happen. We talked about deconfliction. This is a funny video. We'll look at this video and see. It's kind of funny. It's just something to break the ice. And you've probably seen it before, but it's pretty cool.
time about the rate?
Box is $9.95 a month. If you sign up for 6 months and pay by credit card, it drops to $7.50.
Too much math for me.
Right, well, that's the same as a $2.45 a month.
What would you do?
Well, she likes him. I'm not interested in her.
He's quite the salesman.
One of his many talents. We got it.
Do I have to decide today?
Well, of course not. Just take the form and let us know.
This form requires a lot of information.
There's nothing more. Excuse me. What's the box? 401. The key doesn't turn. 401. What's your name? Nelson. It was okay yesterday. Oh, yeah. We had to change the lock. It was broken. It was broken yesterday. And your card's out of date. There's no address. This is my address. That's why I rent the box. Well, we need to know where you work then.
Brian, I thought that was you.
Who the hell is that?
He followed the subject in. Check Face ID.
It's been a long time. Don't you remember? We met at the conference at Suleiman's.
Oh, yes.
No match yet.
Sure looks like.
Our visitor has a weapon.
As soon as I'm done with my business, I need to talk to you about something. If you are not too busy, would you like to get some coffee? We could go down the street.
Sir, we need an emergency contact, an employer, friend. Mr. Nelson, just give us a name.
You're spooked. You're awesome.
I'll come back later. Pick him up. Everybody? I'm going.
I'm a federal agent. Here's what you see. FBI. INS.
Secret Service.
Wasn't one of those guys supposed to be a terrorist?
Kind of interesting from not being deconflict. You have a question that came in, and thank you very much for that. Did you allow walk-around money or just the specified amount for buys? I allowed walk-around money. Actually, it was, and again, when I'm talking about these things, let's make sure we understand our SOPs and our SOPs and our requirements for that, so that we know what we're doing with that. Each department is different. So the word I was looking for is policy. I had a brain fart there for a moment. Let's look at our policies and SOPs. And yes, we did. The way we did, we had ROE, which we call request of funds. And I could put in for an ROE by putting in a target request, which I had specific targets on a request form. And I would put in for, depending on what I was buying, I would put in for that amount of money. So we could put in up to $5,000 at each time. And with that, they would give you the $5,000, and that $5,000 was yours to spend on whatever you want, evidentiary wise. And you had to keep a running tally, and that's that. But to answer your question, yes, we did. We would go around with the extra money. A lot of times what I would allow was the guy that worked undercover making the buys would take along extra money they felt comfortable with. And the reason for that was I would get out, or you would get out there and a guy would say, hey, here's your 8-ball, that'd be $250. Oh, by the way, I just came across 15 Xannies. You want some Xannies? Oh man, let me see how much I got. Oh yeah, okay, I'll take the Xannies. Or anything evidentiary that they had extra, I would let them take the money out, and we would allow that to happen. I think what happens is sometimes if those individuals can handle it, you let them take them. If not, they had the exact specific amount that they carry. But we had access to, I could pull out a big roll of money at any given time and peel it off and count it. And as things got worse with the gangbangers and stuff like that, we started limiting the amount of money he carried. But I always would allow and had extra money just in case I come across something different. You know, once I made the buy on what we were going to do, if the guy said, hey, I got some extra Xannies, or I got some Oxys, or I got this to sell. Oh yeah, man, I don't want all of them, but I'll take 5 of them just to put another case on the guy. Okay. I hope that answered your question. All right. So that was kind of funny. That was a deconfliction issue there. Kind of played it out. I think that was NCIS that did it, but you don't want to get into a blue on blue situation like that. So we're going to look at that and move on to the next slide there. And I want to talk to this one. I tell you what, let's do. Let's take a break. All right. Let's take 10 minutes because I'm going to beat you about the head and shoulders with this one. We're going to cover this one pretty close because I think what happens is a lot of us fall into this complacency thing. Supervisors fall into it, our agents fall into it. So we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, okay? So let's take a break. We'll take about 10 minutes and we'll go back from there, all right? Okay, we're back. This is the last hour. So does anybody have any questions or anything, the comments that we've got prior to? I see everybody's still here. That's a good thing. So if you got any questions or anything, or I touched on something that you want some more information on, that'd be great. I'd be glad to stick around afterwards and answer some questions. Or again, if you send some emails in to me, I'll be glad to answer those too. Right now, let's talk about complacency. And I think it's something that comes about with time on and experience and repetition when we're doing the same thing over and over. We're talking about looking at the narcotics operations and how we go about doing those. One deal leads to another deal and just another deal thing. I want to really talk to you about this based on what happens to me or what happened to me with friends and with people that I've worked with, and me myself getting complacent, dealing with an informant, and we'll talk about that. And it got me jammed up. Undercover 101 is you always take somebody with you to meet a female informant, and this happened to me was and it's story time, so I'm preaching to you. Yeah, I'm going to preach a little bit. Then we'll get back to the teaching here in a while, but it happened to me with a female informant. And what happened was we had Goshen Police Department arrested a couple of females for prescriptions. False. They had stolen a prescription pad. They were writing some fake prescriptions, and they were getting some oxys out of it and Xanax. And I was working with one of the agents from Goshen PD, and I can say that because I'm retired, and I'll put him on Front Street, and I'll have you Google him here. I'll have you Google him and read what has happened so far. So this is what I'm saying about perception, about listening, about being attentive, about paying attention and not falling into a form or a fact of complacency. They called me up and I went over and met with them. They wanted me to come over and interview the 2 informants and see what they had. And usually that's what happened with me. I wasn't assigned to a task force. I worked with DEA, FBI, ATF, US, the Postal Service. I worked with the Agricultural Service. So I worked with everybody, but I didn't want to be assigned to a task force because I didn't want to be confined to one area. So I was fortunate enough to work everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. And I would work with smaller agencies and come in and help them because we had better resources and more money and better manpower and equipment. So if they needed like local task forces, I'd go help. And Goshen's only probably about, it's probably 15 minutes from me east from where I was, one of my offices was up here in Bremen. And I get a call from them and I go over and I interview these two females. One female, she knows a little bit about dope. She's kind of the follower of this other female. The other female, she was pretty invested in dope. She knew what was going on. She knew a lot of dope players. She knew a lot of things. So she was willing to become an informant to work off the charges for the other girl and work off the script charges. So we documented them, signed them up. And the one girl, she really didn't turn out very well, but the other one did. We end up finding out she tells us that she was once a exotic dancer at a place in North Webster, Indiana called Stimulators. North Webster, Indiana has Lake Webster there. I have a lot of people come from Chicago with a lot of money on the lake. There's $1 million homes there. There's a lot of recreation. In the summertime, it's a tourist type town. And with that, there's Stimulators, strip club right smack dab in the middle of town that they've been trying to get rid of forever. They've been trying everything they can to close it down. Nothing's working. So with the fact that she used to work at Stimulators, I decided, you know what? Hey, let's see if we can't run her back in. If we can get some buys out of there, some commingle, some money going through the business, maybe we could shut it down. We could seize the business and go from there. A lot of bikers hung out there. It was pretty rough for that area, that community. It was an agricultural area too, so it was pretty rough. And I thought, well, hey, if we can get in there, we will. So we signed her up and we ended up going to Stimulators. We made some buys out of there, made some coke buys out of some bikers and some folks in there. And we worked. And then I hooked her up with one of the detectives from Goshen. He was our new guy, one of the young guys, a middle-aged guy, but new to the world of narcotics. And he was pretty much running the informant. And I would show up on buy nights or buy days to provide money and some direction for him. So I'm headed to Canada. I go to Canada. I've been going for 25 years to Canada on fishing and hunting trips. And this year I was going to go up and go bear hunting. And I usually take about 2 weeks to go up there. And the reason for that is I do a fly-in fishing trip where there's no cell service and nobody can bother me. So the detective says, hey, not for nothing, but she can buy from her husband, her ex-husband. I said, nah, that don't sound good. We're looking at red flags, right? I said, that don't sound, I said, how about we wait? Don't do anything till I get back. Let's wait on that and see what happens. So I go on my trip and I harvested a bear. We did a lot of fishing, had a great time as usual. Came back, got back, went back to work. He calls me, says, hey, while you were gone, we made a buy off of her ex-husband. I said, okay, So it wasn't but about a week later that it came out in the newspaper that the guy was arrested and he was dealing cocaine and that. And I guess what the CI did that set it up? Well, she had to change her heart. And you guys know what I'm talking about when we talk about buying from, when this is in the CI portion of the program. But let's talk about it now. She had to change her heart because now she's not getting any what? Child support or money or anything from the ex. Now everybody knows she did the ex. So she had to change her heart. So one day I was at the office when I get back and they tell me I got a phone call on line 3 and I pick up the phone and it's her on the phone and I'm at the office. I just got back on vacation and her house was halfway between here, my office and Goshen. So she says, hey, I got to talk to you. It's an emergency. So what's the deal? She says, I can't tell you on the phone. I got to meet you. I said, well, where are you at? She says, I'm home. So, okay, I'll stop by on my way to Goshen. Red flag, right? You're getting it. And I'm open and honest with you. So I go from my office to her, I meet her house by myself, go up, ring the doorbell, she invites me, and we go sit at the kitchen table, which I think is okay, but not okay because I violated Rule 101. We sit down and she commences to tell me that she's having sex with the undercover. They've had sex at her house in the surveillance van. She drove to Indianapolis to a conference to meet with them, to all this. So what's this got to do with complacency? I got complacent because I've done it 100 times. I've met informants. I've done this. I've dealt with informants. I had 7 years on them as an undercover. I should know better, but I got complacent because what? I got in a hurry. I was going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, stop, talk to her, move on. She tells me about them having sex, all this. So my thing is, okay, I leave her house. I drive straight to Goshen Police Department. I go in, I talk to Chief Kettlebar. I say, hey, not for nothing, we got a problem. Apparently is having sex with one of the informants. She's going to go to the newspaper. She's going to sue us, blah, 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 yada, yada. So he says, okay. He says, well, I'll go down and talk to Keith. I go downstairs. I talk to Keith. I says, hey, I says, and as I go down, he's sitting at his desk. I said, hey, I said, not for nothing. I just left the informant's house talking to her. And she tells me that you and her are having sex. And I had to tell your chief, and I've told your chief, now I'm coming to you to let you know up front what happened. And his response was, he leans back in his chair, he throws his hands up on his head, he says, that effing B. Right there, I knew. I said, I didn't even have to go to read body language in school to read that deceptive body language. So I asked him, I says, hey, make sure you got all your documentation together. I'll get all mine together and we'll put it together and blah, 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 yada, yada. So we do. And she ends up suing Goshen Police Department. She ends up suing him. She ends up suing me. She ends up suing the state police. At that particular time, I get a call from the superintendent, my boss, and it asked me, he says, hey, says, we got this lawsuit coming down. Did you do it? So now I'm in a kind of a pickle, right? If I say I did do it, I'm going to get fired. If I say I didn't do it, then they're going to let it ride. It's going to go to court. So I didn't do it. I didn't have, she accused me of sexual harassment and sexual battery, those 2 things. And I said, no, didn't happen. So he says, okay. So it goes to trial. Ends up going to federal court. We end up winning. Her accusations against me went there. And basically what it boiled down to was the state police had deeper pockets. And basically they wanted me to testify against the other guy. But I got dragged through the mud too. So I went through the court, went in, it didn't happen. They did an internal investigation on me. I got dragged through the mud. So there you have what I'm talking about when we talk about complacency. Did anybody else see it? No. Did I let anybody else see it? No. Did it even click in my head that I was being complacent and I shouldn't have done it? No. Didn't even factor. After the fact it did, like, what the hell was I thinking? So if you're home and you got access to your cell phone or to the computer or something, do me a favor and Google Keith Hathaway. He's the marshal at Millersburg Marshal. Google Keith Hathaway and read about what just currently happened. Give you some insight on what happened back in the day. Once I did that, I really refocused on being complacent and oops, I better get back to doing what I'm supposed to be doing and how I'm supposed to do it. And it really refocused me. And it helped me in the future. The other thing that happened with complacency is I had a real good friend named Phil Hawksteller. He worked for Kosciuszko County Sheriff's Department and he was a narc. He and I were partners in the narc scene, and we were like peas in the pod, as Forrest would say. We spent more time together with our families. And Phil got tired of working dope because of the hours, and then he had some kids, started having kids and raising a family, and he wanted to go back to the DB, which he did. One particular day, Phil was at the office, and he was 1042. He was off duty. And he was at the office and they were talking about a burglary suspect that they were looking at doing some burglaries as a suspect in the area. And Phil says, well, you know what? Hey, I know the guy. I dealt with him before in the narc world. He lives on my way home, and I'll swing by and just stop and interview the guy if you want me to. Yeah, okay, no problem, Phil. Good. So Phil leaves the office and he drives down. He stops at the guy's house in front of the house, and he walks up and he knocks on the door. And the female, the wife, walks up to the door, just pushes the door open a little bit and starts to talk to Phil. At that time, the husband, the suspect, I won't even mention his name because it's not worth mentioning. He comes up, pushes her aside, takes a MAC-10, shoots Phil, shoots him once up here in the pelvis, shoots him down here by the groin. It knocked Phil off of the stairs down into the yard. The guy runs through the house. He runs to the kid's bedroom. He shoots one 3-year-old. He shoots his 5-year-old, kills them, shoots at his wife and misses, runs out of the house alongside. And at this particular moment, Phil's in the backyard, or I'm sorry, in the side yard on his back with his hands up. And according to the neighbor witness that heard all the commotion, Phil's begging for his life. The individual walks up and shoots him in the head and kills him. And, we find out about it. We eventually we hunt the guy, try to hunt the guy down. We don't find him for like 24 hours later. We find him. He's driving through town, and he's driving through the city that's pretty much rural agricultural. And to this day, you can still see the bullet holes on the building where he was driving through, where the fire department, some guys in the pickup truck that happened to have rifles were shooting at him and ended up shooting and killing the guy. So we wanted to do an after action report. They asked me to help do the after action report. We go and we do the after action report, and we find out that Phil's guns were on the passenger seat of his car. He was off duty, headed home, took his weapon off, set it on the seat of the car, one on the seat, one under the seat. I went up. I think that there was no life-threatening wounds, the initial shots that knocked him off of the porch, if he would have been able to get to a gun, he could have defended himself when the guy came around the corner. So I always use that story and talk about that when we talk about complacency. And I also want to put in your minds too that, can you see that? Can you see where guys are going off in a different direction or doing things or being complacent? Do you have any control over guys being complacent during the briefing, during the talks, during your time with them? If you do, I would applaud you to take the time to see in yourself if you're being complacent about taking steps to circumvent going through the most or just going around. Again, take time, like I asked before, to recharge your batteries, okay? So that'd be enough preaching and back to the teaching. Did you guys happen to pull up Keith Hathaway from, I think it was a Millersburg PD, who's like, kind of lost contact with him after that, but did you read what happened here not too lately and see? I didn't see it. I didn't know that he was that way. When I worked with him, the no red flags came up, but that's some of the things that we deal with. So please, 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 if you're complacent or you see that your guys are complacent, try to redirect them, all right? I would greatly appreciate the fact that everybody stays safe. Poor weapon access, we talked about that, about carrying your gun, when to carry, when not to carry, is something to keep in mind also. Inaccurate conclusion. Who's going to draw an inaccurate conclusion? Is it going to be the supervisor? Is it going to be the agent? Who's going to do that? There's times that you're going to see the red flags and you're going to ignore the danger because you're not seeing it, or you're not there to experience, or you're not paying attention, you're not listening. So let's make sure that we do that. We don't jump to conclusions when we're out there buying dope. One way to avoid the inaccurate conclusions is to do your homework, gather intel, know your people, know what you're doing. As you gain experience, things will help you. The one thing that I say is that little man right here in the gut as a supervisor. That little man in the gut is telling you things just don't seem right. They just don't feel right. They don't seem right. Even when you listen to your guys on the radio out there doing their thing, or or there's helter-skelter, there's people not paying attention, there's people asking for direction. Stop it. Shut it down, regroup, go back at it. Is it going to take time? Yeah. Are you going to be popular about it? No. Is it a popularity contest? Absolutely not. But you're keeping safety in mind. You're keeping safety to make sure that everything goes right. Can you put your finger on the pulse and make sure everything absolutely goes right? No. But you can control what you can control, and you can see what's going on. Covert Operator muscle guard against their paranoia. You know, like I said, I was out there for 13 years and I got paranoid. I really did. I got paranoid. Bad guys were coming to get me. They were going to get me. You start reading into things and seeing things. You got to regroup with that. Proper planning and preparation will help in accessing those danger signs. Covert op qualities. I don't know if you can pick and choose your guys or coming in as a new supervisor. What can I observe? Some of the things I can make an observation on to see if this person's going to work out as a narcotics officer. Willingness. Are they willing to work a lot of hours, long hours? Are they willing to do the paperwork properly? Are they willing to follow instruction? Are they willing to do that? Or are they just someone that just wants to be there? And again, it goes back to how do I coach them up to be what I want them to be, or to be where we need them in an opportunity for us to do our job successfully. Self-confidence. Are they self-confident? They have too much ego, but yet then are they self-confident and they willing to do it? Do they show good judgment? Are we asking them to do things? Do they come up with scenarios or ways to do stuff that's way out there in left field? Way out there in left field. Do they show good judgment? Temperament. How do they get along with people? How do they get along with your people? Not just necessarily your people, but how do they get along with the bad guys? What do they think of the bad guys? What are you hearing when they talk in their groups about the scumbags or the dirt bags or the shit bags or whatever they call them? Is that becoming a cancer? Is that becoming something that they're talking about that relates to how they interact with people? Are they getting burned out? Everybody wants to come in and say, you know, I'm here to help people. After about 2 or 3 years of being a cop, that kind of goes away if it takes that long. So maybe we need to reevaluate where they're at, what they think of people. Adaptability. Can they play the role? Can they play the role of the undercover or the covert op and jump back into being the family guy or the employee? Do they know when to come out of role? Are they carrying that too far? You know, that's what we want to look at too. Do they have patience? Are they patient with how they go about their business or how they do things? How about the cases? Are they patient with setting up their buys? When you talk about patience, I worked a case with Tommy over in LaGrange, and talk about being patient. It took me 9 years to get that guy. It took me 9 years to bring charges federally upon him for dealing marijuana. And the thing that broke was that luckily they arrested a guy in Lima, Ohio that was working with Tom, and that's how I got the lead to do it. We got to a point where it was kind of a joke. I drive by to take pictures or fly over in a helicopter to take pictures or what have you. And when we see each other in town, we just kind of wave at each other. Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom. You know, it was being patient. Does the person have the courage to do it? Do they have the courage to go down in the area either by themselves or with the CI? Meet the bad guys, hanging out, doing that sort of thing. Do they have the courage? Observation and memory. Observation and memory. You go into a crisis or a situation and you end up getting tunnel vision and not seeing everything that's out there. How do we train them to do that? How do we teach them to do that? Observation and memory. Do you have to have physical stamina to go out there? Yeah. If you're living off of Red Bull and nicotine, caffeine, and hillbilly music, it's what kept me going. But you got to have physical stamina. What are we doing to show that? I know that when I decided to retire, One of my goals was when I stand at attention to receive my retirement badge that I can see my toes. And I can. And it's been 7 years and I still can. Yeah, might have to buy bigger shoes eventually, but I can still see them. Perseverance. Where's the perseverance? Are they going to be able to have perseverance to make it that from the beginning to the end? I know that some departments, they have a time limit where you can work in narcotics. I like that. I like a 3-year time limit. Then after 3 years, you reevaluate. If the individual's doing well and wants to move forward, another 3 years. But 13 years on the street or 13 years buying dope on the street, I know that I don't have the record. I know there's some guys that 14, 15 years working undercover. 13 years is plenty. Can I persevere for that long? Good physical conditioning, knowledge of the criminal element. Do I keep up on that? Do I keep up on street lingo? Do I keep up on drug buys, money, amount, what the bad guys are doing, technology? What knowledge do I keep? Covert operatives display the same know-how, ideas, background, language, slang as a suspect still, but yet I still need to turn it off when I'm not using it. Physical appearance. How does that play in? How does that play in when you're out there doing your deal with all the tattoos and the hair and the biker garb and this and that? Am I going to be able to? I'm not going to be able to at a certain point in time. At one point in time, I had to give up. I couldn't go into a rave. I'm not going to work a rave, but I have somebody to be able to do that. Appears to the role here, who's a chosen. Posing as a construction worker or mechanic, should have calloused hands or permanent dirt and grease. Can I live up to those aspects, the characteristics? For me, this one was a killer for me after a while. Technical skills. It got to a point where I just didn't even engage in that much. I relied on my younger guys to work the new equipment, to do the stuff, my technical guys. I had a little knowledge about how it worked, but as far as digging in there deep, absolutely didn't have it. I try to keep up. Again, like I say, this was my first webinar and would adapt to it at 63 years old. And hopefully it turned out and did okay. But if you don't have that knowledge or you don't have that willingness to adapt or change, you're going to get left behind, especially in the drug world. Getting out of role, Covert Op must return to normal after the operation. What is normal? What is normal? That's your opportunity to observe that undercover, that covert op. How far is he still getting out there? Is he still drifting out there, still playing a role, still being engaged, even at the office or at home or away from the actual dope deal? I'm going to watch that. Covert operator is accepted by the organization. Special language skills, particular appearance, nationality, special skills, trade or occupation. Seriously, when we were working a lot in the Hispanic community, we were looking for Hispanic officers, individuals who spoke Spanish, and that before I put someone in there that doesn't have a clue or negotiates a 4,000-pound deal that doesn't speak only I spoke survival Spanish. So where's that fall? What am I going to do with that? Things to consider. Fit the role, should have knowledge and skills, physical characteristics of the role, should dress the part. I know at one particular point in time, I had a wardrobe that covered everything, covered from going to that bar in Elwood all the way to south side of Chicago. So what do I pick? What do I choose? What do I wear? Should dress the part. I had a friend of mine that owned a pawn shop. I go down there and get some bling or get some stuff to fit in. Being able to do that. Guns, stuff to wear, different uniforms, knowledge of the drugs. We'll be purchasing, packaging, prices, and this all comes for training. It all comes from being out there and doing it, and taking that opportunity to learn. Be prepared in advance to abstain from the use of drugs. Again, going into the heroin shoot house. I'm not going to become a heroin addict. It's going to become a gunfight to get out of it, because I'm not going to take drugs, become an addict or using their stuff in catching AIDS or something like that. I'm not going to simulate smoking dope. I'm not going to simulate taking dope. Excuse to come up to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. Training, making operations safe, training for both the supervisor and the covert operator. Am I going to be a supervisor that establishes training and makes the training available to them, makes the training so that they train? Plus, as a supervisor, I've got to maintain my skill levels also. Operations in advance, notice to be safe. With little advance, notices are not recommended. All right, by bus, we're going to talk about that. Not much. I don't know if you guys still doing by bus or not. CI initiates arrest action by the bus signal, and it's going to be I gave you made, or is it help? And crossfire danger, things to think about when you're taking people down or you're making the arrest. Chandler, Arizona Police Department basically worked off of buy bust and drug buys. That pretty much subsidized their drug unit. But when we talk about making that drug arrest, or we talk about doing that reversal, let's think about where we're at. Did we do everything needed to make that happen? Here's a little video that you're going to see that explains that. Okay, we look at that and we think, and again, I'm not armchair quarterbacking or looking at a review that a mistake occurred, but just the fact of the matter is it went from 0 to 60 in no time, and ended up in a situation where, again, it's probably just a rip when you're talking that much dope. In Arizona, 500 pounds, that's not uncommon. But in order to take the time, and remember, we talked about the ops plan. What does that do? It slows people down. The chief says, yeah, there was an ops plan. Was it adequate? As a supervisor, I'm going to review that, and I'm going to look and see the timeline of when this occurred and what happened. And then I'm going to probably second guess that and say, okay, do we have surveillance? Have we set a surveillance team out there? Have we did our homework on that? Have we did our due diligence to make sure it's safe? And that's what I'm going to do. Is it popular? No, but that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to slow it down. Again, we talked about location requirements because we control the location. Is it well lit? Easy to establish surveillance? Is there civilians around? How can we control the area? Is it away from the subject's home turf? And what else, other elements are there to have us look into that? Are you in charge of the meeting location? I'm in charge of that. We are in charge of that. If the target names a location, you can say no. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Give a reason why not. Or you don't really need to give a reason. It's like, we're not doing it, so there you go. Safety is paramount. We control everything. Reasons that we don't want to go, picked by the target. It's been known for rip-offs. Police working in it. My favorite one I used to use was my mom's says I can't go into that area? Who's going to argue with your mom, right? Good location, negotiate, keep it in mind. These are the red flags that we're looking for and some ideas of where we want to go to make those buys. Just a little bit quick going through these, but I want to get this in this 4 hours that we had today. As a matter of fact, we're going to skip to just another deal ops or thing. We're going to talk about ops plans, weapons, vests, reconnaissance, rehearsals, TAC planning, communications, equipment, signal, everything you can put in there. Please put in the ops plan, or when you're reading the ops plan or when you're giving advice to your agents, make sure that this ops plan is incorporated with everything. I want more input, more information than I do NAs on everything. The one thing is a sample of an ops plan. What I would recommend about your ops plans is when you do a briefing, put a number on it. Number 1 through however many, and have them sign that out under their name with that number out and then in. All right, because what happens is a lot of times people get discouraged in turning and doing information or giving information. I've found these in glove boxes of vehicles that our interdiction guys have stopped. I found them in the bathroom at the location where we did the briefing. I found them left in the squad room. What do they have on there? They have everybody's information, phone numbers, cell phone number, car description, location, good guys, bad guys. Put a number system on it, sign it out. When they sign it out, they sign it back in. It's not left in the bathroom, squad room, glove box, backseat of your car, backpack, so that information stays confidential. Something to think about. It worked for me. And if you didn't sign it back in, it wasn't good for you. Where is it? Who's got it? Where's it at? Should include everything on that. Again, like I said, all this information is on there. So let's get them back. Vehicle descriptions, flash roll, radio signs, everything. Hospital, nearest hospital. What's going on with it? Albuquerque, UC. Everybody's heard this. I'm going to play it for you. This is probably the last thing that you're going to see today. Okay?
then groups of people to the school. I mean, we're only 7. We're not as big as most people here. You know, we're 7 third city out. They can afford 7 people to train, 7 students to train, and let us learn what everybody, you know what I mean? Not the doctors. But the biggest thing is the let us go to training. Us as a group have taken it upon ourselves to do more scenarios, to train within the unit more often, plan for situations like this, you know, extraction of the UC and taking them places never crossed my mind how we were going to do that. As far as equipment, they gave us the equipment that we needed. They gave us wires and upgraded radios and scanners, but it's kind of dissipating again. Narcotics and alcohol is always in the back files. You know, the little team, our game, they would always get me toys and we wouldn't get anything. And the wires have been an issue, obviously, for a long time. I brought it up many times to that area.
I'm here talking with Holly Garcia, and we're talking about the aftermath after the shooting in Albuquerque during the Covert Operation in January of 2015. How you doing, Holly?
Good, how you doing?
I'm good. You mind talking to me to talk at length about the shooting itself? Talk to me about the aftermath, you know, the way you guys felt and what protocols put into place and how you all handled it and so forth after this critical incident.
I think obviously I went a lot of scenarios through my mind. And you won't believe it, never something that had gone through my mind. I don't think our department knew how to handle it. They didn't know how to handle us. It flew in some crisis team for us to tell our stories. So we talked to our strengths and our mandatory. We stacked work strengths. What was hard for us is at that point, we didn't know if Jacob was going to live or not. He had made it like a week, and kind of were better for his survival, but we were still pretty messed up. There was rumors going around that we would be disbanded. We'd be thrown to different teams. So at that point, for me, I kind of felt like a pariah as far as at that. All I did during those times was we tried to go visit Jacob every day and we hung out with the team, just because we were so damaged. And the fact that we were going around, they would separate us and treat us like me and my guys, not including the lieutenant, had done something wrong just for their damage. I didn't really talk to many of the cops at the time. My buddies all, to check on us, and were pretty cool. But we were kind of in a little mark bubble at that time and not really sure what was going to happen during it. What was nice was they did give us as much time as we needed to get back to work. But I think part of that was they kind of thought we were fuck ups at that point. They didn't want any more bad press. So they weren't in a hurry to make us go back to work either. A lot of the issues that came up after the shooting, like just as far as not the greatest equipment, lack of training. Like I said, I'd only been in NURBS with these guys for about 4 months before all this stuff happened, and I had been placed in NURBS, not by my decision. And then I'd come to learn later that it was a pretty new team overall, but at least half the team had not even received basic narcotics training or undercover training. And if there was training for gangs and or repeat offenders team or intel team, invite NURBS, wouldn't be invited. So a lot of this stuff has been after the fact. But part of the good thing about that was when I first came over, I noticed that there was issues with training, but I gotten quite with my DBA supervisor before that with a lack of training, and I kind of got in trouble for that. He was some time on that supervisor was put back in arts, and I went over in arts. I didn't want to make a big wave about stuff like that then. But after Jacob got shot, I realized I'd rather be the asshole, push for training, and do everything I could, and be the bad guy. And feel like I had kept my mouth shut, just to keep people not pissing off. So I'd rather do everything I could to keep my guys safe, and like I said, be the asshole than look back and say, I knew something was wrong and I never fixed it because I didn't want to cause weight. So for me, that's the big thing now. I don't care who I piss off and you agree. I don't think people agree with me, but I just want to point out things I think are important. And a lot of times later on, the guys who they disagree with it, once you even come back and say, you know what, I thought about it and you were right. I was just pissed off at the time. So that for me personally, that's helped me out a lot. I don't have my guys safe to be everybody's friend. We weren't disbanded, and it was nice because they had to get moved to feel together that we could go back to work as a team and be with each other that much and still talk about it and put the elbow that way. I've also learned it's better to ask for things and not receive them and document all that stuff. They just have someone so you know, and then you just complain about it and go on your own way, and nothing ever happens because that process can be tough. So just to be more people's lives, just for the greater good, and not thinking much shit.
So, what have you done, or what have you all done since the initial mental health, when you sent the psychologist from LAPD or whatever to talk to you all? Have you all had any type of meetings or things that give you coping skills? Is that still frowned upon with your agency? What's happening with that? This is a classic traumatic that leads to PTSD. It's very well recognized now, and so I'm just kind of wondering how your department dealt with that.
We had to sit down and sit down with the training, we had a one-on-one with the training, but I can't speak for everyone else, but I feel they would do the same as me, and like we just wanted to release back to work. And stuff will come up later. You don't recognize it's PTSD. The only reason I recognize some of the stuff is because I talked to my buddies who were in the military, who told me about stuff that happened to them and stuff that they were experiencing that they just thought was normal, and they realized it was PTSD. I think if you can compare your stories like that with other people instead of just thinking suddenly you can't sleep and it's just normal, maybe something else is happening. So just talking to my buddies who have it made it easier for me and kind of realize it's not normal, and you're probably not normal when you're acting like you were 2 years ago or something like that. I don't think we and they did education the rest of the time.
So there is at least still some stigma.
I don't think it's a stigma, I just think it's easy to do it and not tell anyone about it. I think it's so you're fine. And what's it gonna help talking to people about this sort of things? But for me and my team, there's no stigma. I think I could tell the guys tomorrow that I'm hooked up on the talking shit, and I think they don't know about it.
Right, that's the closeness to that.
Yeah. But for me personally, I don't see who are talking to some person on a regular basis for a situation where, like, Jacob lived, he's not dead.
Yeah.
So it's not as traumatic as everything.
Hey guys, that about wraps it up. We're at, I got a couple questions here, and that about wraps it up with what I have to give you. I hope it's something that you learned that you can use. I think this will last 15 minutes. If it doesn't get you thinking about some things, then we need to reevaluate. So thank you. And there's from John, will we be able to get access class materials after class? As with previous PLE class, definitely would like to talk through some of this with my corporal. Yeah, if you go to PLET and check on their on our website and see it, and if you can get more stuff from them. If not, John, you, again, you guys, I mean this. I don't want to get sentimental and I'm going in. I mean this from bottom of my heart. If you guys need something, you email me. If you can't get it, we'll get it for you. You're welcome to get anything I've got, and I'll get it to you. So yeah, try the PLET website. And if that doesn't go through for you, send me an email and I'll get it to you. All right, guys? Okay. Any other questions or anything? I'll stick around afterwards for questions or that. But again, thank you for participating. Thank you for hanging in there. Hope you learned something from this. And you guys, honestly, pray for you and be safe out there.